That's right. We got a great show for you guys tonight. Again, as always, like to have the audience here kind of shuffle in. Let the alerts go out. Oh, my God. The great Jimmy Harrison already. The Super Chat's working, guys. It's a miracle. Thank you so much. It's Friday night in New York. The Super Chat is working. He says, much love, brothers. Looking for one hell of a show. It's going to be a great show, Jimmy. And listen, I'm not just saying that because I say it often, but tonight's really special. It's a great panel assembled for you guys. A lot of news broke this week. These are the Fridays I look forward to. Not just that. It's great when you have new game releases coming out and we're going right into that season. And it's great to have February be that new season for games that come out. So much new tech to discuss as well. Guys, if you'll go ahead and hit that like button as we get started, please consider hitting that subscribe button. The channel has been growing since especially we've adopted the Last of Us reaction show on Monday nights. Shout out to Domino Zero. Fly, Eagles, fly. No, Domino, we are such close friends, but my God, not the Eagles again, please. Oh, God, that hurts. Anyway, right above that lovely description, you'll see the join button. And I want to give a shout out again. I'm not sure if he's even here yet. I didn't see him quite yet in the chat, but shout out to DC Gaming, who has been gifting subs to people in the chat for 2 weeks now. It is just warms my heart. It means the world to me that you guys are here. You join the channel. You can see that the family members are growing down there below. I'm going to call each one of these individuals out, but if you will consider joining the channel, it would mean the world to me. But a like and subscribe means just as much, too. That being said, let me go ahead and call these wonderful gamers out one by one. The great Sir X-Man, JudaZuk, WoolleyGamer, MumbleRanting Gaming, Tyson Web 509, TrueWiddy, Big Chuck 777, Alphonso Carter, BRAP, Jamie, Damion, the great Jimmy Harrison, Andy Hart, Isaac Gentry, ArchWarAngel, Red Hood 420, Hamsolo Gaming, Rob Jones, DadOfWar, Night Ripper 7, Totodope, Kratos 99, ThumbsThumbs, Jan Watkins, GetThisWork, our newest Mooch Maniac, GetThisWork. I love that name. Absolutely love it. I'll be screaming that out every week. Our major Mooch Maniacs, Sergeant 12, I guess we'll call him Sergeant. I've known Sergeant for a long time. Didn't know Sergeant 12. Seattle Chef, Muck 45, Michael Camona Jr., Nolaorigins, Newtonian, Truth Serum, Brosie Brosum, Raji, Chris 713, your boy Roy, Scoleri Brothers, Smokes 901, Julian Johnson, DC Gaming. Shout out to DC again. Miko, Gaming with Persona, and Jay Barry, who've got What's Up PlayStation, 11 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. They go over and check them out. They were off last week for gaming purposes, but they're back tomorrow morning. Supreme Samurai, Tactical Gamer, Donnell Brown, that guy Spinny, 4-star General, Brian B, a.k.a. Delirium Blades, and our VIP Mooch Maniacs, Domino Zero, Marty the Ambassador, Shadow Assassin, Strictly. Got a chance to podcast with Strictly last week. That was a lot of fun as well. And the Wise Old Gamer, and our honorable mentions, Percolator 9000, Frostbite Slash, Hustle and Motivate, Slaying Chalain, Dre Watson, D-WAT. Where are you guys? You're out there about food, water, toilet. We miss you so much. And our forever Mooch Maniacs, Longshot 316, and the great Optimus Code. Guys, I see some wonderful people shuffling in here. I see the great Zuby Tech is here. Hustle and Motivate's here. Ham is here. By the way, shout out to Ham Solo as well for doing some amazing interviews. Just outstanding interviews. You guys go over and check out his channel on YouTube, please. The great Neil Augusto. That guy Smitty says, shout out to this panel. It's a great panel, that guy Smitty. And BRAP, he says, Xbox in last place like the Washington Commanders. Forte made me say this. We haven't had Forte on the show in a while, but I got news for you. Forte's going to have an outstanding episode tonight. That being said, let me get to this great panel. They're here. A lot of them are here from overseas. And let me tell you something. It is odd hours of the night and morning for some of these panel members, and they've decided to spend their Friday night, a.k.a. Saturday mornings, with you, with me. So it's great to have them here. Let me start with the one and only. You guys know him as maybe one of the greatest Xbox defense lawyers on earth. I'm shocked he's even here, especially with the EU cracking down recently. I would have thought he would have been in Brussels. Xbot 448. Xbot, how you doing tonight?
Yo, what's going on, brother? What is up, panel? And of course, what is going on, chat? Guys, it has been a while. It's good to be back. And I think you got it twisted, Mooch.
What's that?
Everything is all cool with the EU. They're actually at the table. That's what this whole thing is. They're at the table discussing things with us, and we're going back and forth right now. It's actually a good thing what's going on now.
I
So
see.
calm down, man.
Well, listen, I got news for you. That's fine. You don't calm me. Calm down the world. The world is very, very animated on this.
Why do you think I'm on tonight, brother?
That's right. That is correct. We're going to do, I promise the audience this every week. We are not going to go hot and heavy on too much of this acquisition stuff. I think we've beaten that dead horse. The great Royal Boyle 78 is always here for my guy, Mooch. Let's go Crossfire. Here's to a great show. Hope all on the panel and the chat are having a wonderful night. Royal Boyle, to you as well, buddy. And I know that you just moved in that new home. Hope the move is complete and you're able to relax again. Great to have Royal Boyle here as well. Listen, without further ado, the great Hugo Spencer is here. You guys might know him as Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. BRAP, how the hell are you doing tonight, buddy?
Alicia.
Oh, is that Hugo? Yes. Hugo, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Window up there. There are people. Yeah. That's good.
What the world is going? Is this what happened? Wow.
Dude.
Forte, this is what happened when you left, man. This is your fault. This is your
Well,
fault,
Forte,
because
I believe that aren't you one of the people that love the Plague's Tale as well?
I think he did. Yes.
Yes.
did,
Until
but
now.
Not anymore.
I hope
Not
not.
anymore.
Not
I-
anymore.
mine-
That ship's
Hugo's
sailed.
voice like that anymore.
That's
Yeah.
my job is to ruin that game. No, I'm only kidding. The great Hugo Spencer. BRAP, great to have you tonight, buddy. Good.
No,
How are things?
Yeah, hey,
Yeah.
happy to be here, Mooch. Look, I actually tried. I think I tried calling you earlier to get the BP up, but I don't think
I
you were
missed
out,
that.
so-
I apologize. Believe me, it's up.
But,
the BP is up.
But you know what's cool? It's like we have like the BRAP has invaded Crossfire, like the NWO back in the WCW days.
That's
we
right.
have Forte and Slimo here.
It's great. Listen, I got to be honest. And shout out to the great Eric Jackson. Eric was also going to be joining us tonight. He's a little under the weather, but I was to give a shout out to Eric Jackson, who's just phenomenal. You guys know him as the voice of reason. Yes, we like to bring the BRAP panel on here for some and whenever I can, I get the great Slow-Mo Backslap as well. Slow-Mo generally speaks out there and puts people's ridiculousness to rest.
Hey, Mooch, can I just
Sure.
fair warning to the chat tonight? Like, please, anyone in the chat, do not
Here we
accuse
go.
Slow-Mo of being a shield. That man, like that saying "f around and find out." I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do
F
it.
around and find out.
Ain't
It's
no
so true.
ain't no shields on the DPS podcast, sir. I don't know what you
Yo,
talking
slow mo on the real. I thought he was just going to warn everybody that he had started drinking about an hour ago, and he.
Oh,
he's,
we
like,
already knew
full
that.
into
though.
it.
That's a
Yeah.
recap.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
There's no need for a warning for that. I
That's
mean,
Friday night.
No, actually, no drinking tonight, unfortunately.
I appreciate that, BRAP. Thank you. It's no. Well, we say no drinks January,
Yeah.
but we're into February.
That's later on with me and the missus. We'll be doing that later on tonight.
Very nice. There's a
And-
little
and
a
you-
little
and-
look into
and
the
you
BRAP
know-
household. Everybody, there it is. I
You know,
love it.
we'll be hanging out later if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, I think we got the hint. Let me say, great shout out to Ham Solo. He says this past week was Seamus Blackley. That's right. I did catch a bit of that. Great to see Seamus out there. That man absolutely does not hold back. Ham, keep doing your thing, man. Outstanding channel you have over there on YouTube. Speaking of somebody we haven't seen in a while, though, the Great Gaming Forte is here, and I got to be honest with you. I almost think I could take the night off. I'm that happy that Forte's here. Forte, welcome back to the show, buddy. You know, I put you in every plug, even if you're not here. I don't care. I don't care.
He's like, I see it. He's
Yeah,
like, I see it.
I noticed it, man. I was like, man, I said, man, Mooch is awesome, man. You know, even when I know I can't be there, he still plugs me, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, but no, it's great to be here, man. You know, for a person, I'm just sitting here, not on camera. If you can't see me, I'm drinking amaretto sour right now because you know it's Crossfire night. You gotta get it in. You know, long day at work.
Yes.
Here hanging out with the gamers and stuff, which is always an amazing thing. So let's definitely talk about the stuff that happened over the course of the week. It's gonna be a great time.
Appreciate that, Forte. Next spot, I'm not sure if you realize it, but we're getting a bit of feedback on your microphone.
Really?
Spot. Yeah, when he was talking, your logo was popping. So just maybe while I do the rest of the intros, just kind of fiddle with that, see what you can figure out. Let's get to our special guest here. This is going to be fantastic. This is a long time coming, and my fault. He should have been on the show a while ago. But there's no better time to bring this individual on. Anybody that follows him on Twitter knows what his forte is, and that is finance. He knows finance, he knows accounting, and he's going to teach everybody a bit tonight. The great David Faulkner. Dave, you know, I know that it's about 11 o'clock or something like that in the morning over there in Australia, right? I'm trying to even get the time zones right. But Dave, I got to be honest with you, way too long. You should have been on the show a while ago. How you doing this morning for you?
Yeah, it's great to be here finally. Thank you for the invite. Doing well. The world still exists on the Saturday. So,
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to be able to chat to some pretty awesome people, and looking forward to it. The topics are going to be pretty hot.
Absolutely, David. It's great to have you here. And like I said, get ready. You're going to be on the hot seat first, possibly this evening. But the great Slow-Mo Backslap is here. Slow-Mo, we kind of already gave you a formal introduction. It's the, what is it? Mess with Slow-Mo and find out is basically the new chart I just got handed to me. So, Slow-Mo, outstanding to have you here tonight, buddy. You're going to be our voice of reason, especially on a couple of different subjects. How you doing tonight?
Well, I'm gonna try to keep things even. Even though I'm supposedly a 3-4-3 shill, I'm gonna try my best to be as
That's new to me.
objective as possible. And but it is what it is. I know tonight's gonna go left at some point. Now I'm just gonna sit back and just watch the fireworks. Maybe light up a cigar. Enjoy the show. You know what it is.
Absolutely, buddy. Well, it's great to have you here, Slow-Mo. And I appreciate you being here on such short notice too. Really means a lot to me. The great Pio is with us again tonight. When you think about what's going on here, there's just been a lot of PlayStation news. And whenever I see anything like this, we've got, of course, the financials come out. The PSVR 2 stuff comes out. We're talking about God of War Ragnarok. Happens to be this gentleman's one of his favorite games, if not his favorite game. You've got to get somebody that is that big and electrifying in the Sony community on the show. And the great Pio is with us tonight at 1 a.m. Pardon me, his time. Pio, welcome back to the show, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Had my cheat day today, so I'm pretty carved up.
Nice.
Very tired, but I have a lot of carbs with me, so I can do a show.
That's all right. Listen, I love how he extras up on the carbs like he's going to be doing like the Tour de France on Crossfire. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that, buddy. Just get that energy because we're going to need that fire tonight, Pio. And last but certainly not least, a very good friend of mine, great Spawnwave, is back on the show. Guys, you guys know Spawnwave Media. It really takes almost no introduction at all. The man has really kind of entered into his own. He owns a large chunk of the gaming YouTube space. He does news every morning, provides all kinds of different information across Nintendo, Sony, PlayStation, and Microsoft's Xbox products. The great Spawnwave is back. Spawn, it's been too long, buddy. How you doing tonight?
Oh, it's great to be back. It's been a good week. Gaming news, gaming. Any week you get a Dead Space game to play. It's good stuff. So a lot of Dead Space, a lot of Fire Emblem, a little bit of Hi-Fi Rush. So
God, that sounds good. That's a great
good time.
It's gonna be a great week, great weekend for a lot of gamers. Spawn, great to have you here. And usually I put Spawn on the hot seat. I'm actually gonna give Spawn a break here. I'm going to Spawn. I'm gonna go to the great David Faulkner here. I do want to discuss something. David, what is going on recently? Yep. I saw, we've seen a trend over the past 2 weeks, and feel free to please tell me if I'm right or wrong here. But the trend across all big tech companies, not just one in particular, was that it was a downward trend. We've seen a lot of bad quarterly reports coming out, and people said, get ready. It's not going to be good for PlayStation either. I thought Thursday was going to be an uppercut punch when the numbers came out. But surprisingly, Sony took a bit of a hit, but PlayStation did quite well. What are you reading into this whole thing as far as we heard that December was going to be one of the biggest months for PlayStation 5 sales. Now we're seeing the 11 million sold of God of War. Overall, what was your take when you saw these numbers come out? I saw a PlayStation reports 53% Q3 revenue growth.
Yeah, so 53% year-on-year revenue growth compared to Q3 last year. But keeping in mind Q3 last year's PlayStation didn't have a big title released, and the Q3 of 2020 is when they released the PlayStation 5 and all the rest of that. So this Q3 quarter wasn't far off, pretty close to being the same as when the quarter they launched the PlayStation 5. It had some big numbers in it. Both number of units sold for the PlayStation 5, huge amounts of game sales for the marquee titles. Yeah, it performed quite well. It wasn't far off being a record quarter for PlayStation. And likewise, it was pretty consistent for the Sony Group overall. Compared to same time last year, they were up on their revenue. Their operating income's taken a hit because of their manufacturing costs. But yeah, the biggest thing to take out of it was they didn't change their forecast. So they still think they're going to do 18 or 19. Well, they increased their forecast for PS5 sales.
Did they actually,
19 million
David,
for the year? So that they still think they're going to hit big numbers this quarter.
Am I wrong, David? Didn't they actually up the numbers? They were originally scheduled for 18. They went to 19 million units. Is that true?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's not something you see in these times right now. Usually you're seeing, right? I mean, BRAP, we've discussed this at length in other subjects. Usually we've seen a decline, especially with the markets across the world. This isn't about one country in particular. There's seemingly, people say, a recession on our hands in the future. I mean, people are starting to be a little bit more frugal with their money, as they should. What do you think when you see these numbers, BRAP? Are you impressed?
Yeah, I gotta, like, I think I was telling Falky the other day, we had Falky on BRAP this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Shameless plug.
Oh, nice plug.
And I gotta say, like, I was expecting some like a downtick in numbers because of, look, I mean, gaming, video games, it's a luxury item. It's not a necessity. There's been a tightening of the belt in consumer spending here in the U.S. and overseas, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe there's going to be a little, downtrend in numbers here, and so it's almost like the jobs number today, which blew my mind when I saw the U.S. added 512,000 jobs when people were predicting 185,000. That's just absurd.
Wow. Yes.
But I was predicting like I think I should say many people. I had some other people that I talked to that PlayStation was going to report some down numbers, and I mean like holy moly, like the numbers were just big. I mean, and I think that just speaks to the look, like we've always talked about there being demand in the marketplace for PlayStation products and a high demand. And, a lot of us and, the MPD analysts would say, hey, whoever can get, we know we talked about this on this show, but whatever console manufacturer can get enough consoles on retail shelves is probably going to win MPD that month. And we saw that. We saw kind of the back and forth. Whoever could get enough inventory on store shelves would win. And now that Sony's consistently doing that, we see the outcome now. And there's just, I think what these numbers show us, there's been this pent-up demand for PlayStation 5. And, the other number that was pretty impressive, too, is 30% of the people in the PlayStation 5, I think ecosystem it is, weren't in PlayStation 4. So,
yes,
this just tells me, Mooch, that there's just a high demand right now for PlayStation 5 consoles. And now Sony's able to meet that demand.
I'm kind of glad you said that, BRAP. I want to go to Spawn. Spawn, listen, I listen to you every morning. Every morning you have a show, I'm there. And, Spawn, I got to be honest with you. I thought you did a really good job of due diligence. And it's difficult these days, Spawn. I think you could speak to this, of keeping an even, fair balance and not showing too much favoritism towards one console or the other. So Spawn does it. He's one of the best in the business on that. But, Spawn, we've been saying on this show where what BRAP just said kind of holds a lot of water here. You've got a situation now where these consoles have now been out for over 2 years, Spawn. You're now seeing the games are coming out. Of course, call it a cheesy slogan, call it what you will, but let the games do the talking. At the end of the day, your toaster's only as good as the bread you put in it, okay? So here's the consoles. They're here. They've got the power that they both have, respectively. Sony's been putting out games. Now, with the shortage seemingly behind us as we go into a post-pandemic situation, you're seeing basically the same effects, Spawn, that we saw in the PS4 era, where PlayStation's kind of taking off at this point. Now, Spawn, you heard what I just said. You're seeing the numbers. Where are you on all of this as these quarterly reports have come out, and just as you're seeing things kind of flying off the shelves?
Well, I think the biggest part here is that Sony's figured out their production issues. So you see 7.1 million PS5 ship in Q3.
Yeah.
So October, November, December. And they say they're going to get to 19 million, which means Q4, January, February, March, they're going to ship another 6.2.
Yeah, that's
a lot post Christmas, because usually people splurge for Christmas and then pay off the credit card bill the following 3 months.
Yes.
So I think right now they have a lot of confidence in Hogwarts Legacy, and it makes sense considering they've aligned themselves so much with the marketing. They did a whole state of play for it. It's always next to the PlayStation logo. So I kind of feel like that game, they're doing to Hogwarts Legacy what they did to Destiny way back in the day, where people didn't even know Destiny came out on the Xbox at one point.
Yep.
So I think Hogwarts Legacy is that same situation where they'll pull in people who never had a PS4 because they want to play Hogwarts Legacy, and they think it's only on the PS5. I think that game has the potential to be either the best selling or maybe in the top 3 for the entire year.
Spawn,
it's right next to the PS5 basically everywhere.
I love that you made the comparison with Bungie and the whole situation with Destiny. That is actually probably a 1-for-1 right there. And shame on me for being in the gaming news criteria for such a long time here and not knowing. But what has this developer made besides Hogwarts Legacy? What are they known for prior to this?
I think they made Cars 3.
Oh, really?
And Disney Infinity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why whenever I see the previews for this, I look at it a little sideways because I'm basically like, where's the catch?
Right.
Every time it's like this seems a little strange that they went from, smaller games like that, right? Ones that are obviously pushed out there for product placement or it's lining up with a movie or something there where they don't expect some massive budget AAA quality, and then they show up with this that every time they show it, it looks high quality and it looks obviously like what Harry Potter fans have always wanted. But
yes.
It to me, it just doesn't line up. Hey, at one point, Rocksteady showed up with Arkham, Batman, Arkham, and everyone was like, "Who's this?" And then they show up with this game, and it's incredible. So you never know. Maybe this is their big jumping off point.
Yeah,
and I think one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Hogwarts Legacy is the #1 pre-order game at the moment by a long way.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I'm saying. I think they're banking on a lot of PS5s moving off store shelves because of that game specifically.
Yeah, these third party.
The other thing I would add to that is Forte be able to talk about it more because of his insight. PlayStation specifically increased their inventory holdings by billions of dollars worth of stock, right? So about $4.5 billion inventory increase. So I'd be very curious to know how many of the PSVR 2 bundles that are getting shipped out for release in a couple of weeks actually have the VR2 head console in it, as opposed to just a headset on its own.
I wasn't aware that they were going to do a bundle with a console and a PSVR headset, David.
That's what I'm curious to know. They've got they've increased their stock in the inventory a huge amount.
That's interesting. I could see that. I do think that the Hogwarts Legacy being paired and having its own state of play with PlayStation. Again, we are all, and I say this, by the way, bravo to everybody in the chat. You guys, I give you guys the credit as well. Like, when it comes down to it, everybody on this panel, everybody in the chat, you guys are hardcore gamers. You guys are paying attention. You guys are watching the news. But for most people that are walking by a GameStop, and we have the great gaming Forte here. Forte, you guys have tremendous displays up in your store for Hogwarts Legacy. And when it comes down to it, somewhere on that display has a PlayStation logo. So
all of them have PlayStation logos. They don't say nothing about Xbox on them.
No, but do you see people come in basically and say, where can I buy this? You have to kind of explain it that it's everywhere, but they see it on there. Do they specifically maybe gravitate to a PlayStation for that particular title?
No, I actually pre-ordered 2 copies of the game on PlayStation 5 while they were buying PlayStation 5s today.
Wow. Yeah,
because they said they was like, well, I really don't want to wait for it to come on PS4. So I guess I'm getting a PS5 today, and that's the reason why they did it.
It's amazing too. We think, right, and BRAP, that wow is justified because when it comes down to it, right? No, it is, because a lot of people think that these marketing rights don't do that, but they really do hold a lot of weight.
They do.
So, and let me go. So, Pio, while we're discussing this whole thing, I've kind of bundled the 1 and 2 topics together here. Pio, God of War Ragnarok surpasses 11 million copies sold. I mean, Pio, you've been, I think I don't know, you probably have 7 million views on your opening of God of War Ragnarok. So my well, rightfully so, by the way, Pio. But when you see this and you're hearing what David said, you hear what Spawn said, you're hearing what Forte just said. So we've gone from everywhere from quarterly reports from the actual companies all the way down to brick and mortar stores that are telling you how this is kind of moving. Do you now see this progression of PlayStation really kind of moving forward and not stopping at all, similar to last gen?
Oh, definitely. I've noticed here, like in December, all the stores, major stores, have PS5s in them. Now, not a lot, but depends on what day they come in and stuff like that. But God of War selling 11 million. That's the fastest Sony first-party game by far to reach 10 million copies, like over 10 million copies. Not even close. And I'm very happy about that because obviously God of War is my favorite franchise. So that means they keep doing more. And also, it tells Sony that playing games keep selling. They should make more. And I'm also curious. One thing nobody mentions though is Sony has revealed God of War sales twice, but never Horizon, Gran Turismo, or Last of Us Part 1. I'm always annoyed by that. Like they just pick and choose what sales data they want to, tell us.
That's a good
wish
point.
they did like Nintendo. I wish they did like Nintendo, where like they just told you everything every quarter.
Well, wait. Let me ask you a question though. So, Pyle, do you believe that GT7? Have we seen any of those sales numbers? Are we assuming that GT7 did well? I would have thought it did well. It's probably one of the largest racers in sales in history, right? I believe it's probably the top one.
So they said the series has 90 million, but it never said how much GT7 has, like Gran Turismo 7 has.
Yeah, is this Spawn? Do you hear that? I mean, Spawn, do you have any numbers? Have you seen anything besides that large 90 million number Pyle's talking about?
No, not really. We haven't seen. Generally, they'll tell you when it hits a certain mark.
Yeah,
but they are using Gran Turismo 7 to sell the PS5 in Japan. They have a bundle specifically, it seems, for Japan with that. But I've never seen any hard numbers drop. He is right though. Usually, Sony will pick specifically a game that's selling very fast and just paste the number up in however many months or whatever it is. And it just works in their mind to strengthen the PlayStation Studios image or logo.
Yeah.
Because they'll avoid talking about games that
it did push. GT7 pushed the entire series past 90 million or at 90 million. So the estimates out there are like 5 to 6, which, I mean, 5 to 6 is 5 is probably a break. I mean, I don't know what the budget is, but typically for AAA games, like 5 million is kind of like the breaking point, the break even point. So those are the estimates out there right now, 5 to 6 million for GT7.
Okay. No, well, I don't think those are necessarily bad numbers at all, BRAP, to be honest with you. I'm going to go ahead and just switch over. It's funny. I do want to say one thing before we switch over subjects real quick. Spawn just said something, and maybe Nintendo's too candid with it. You know what I mean? I mean, the transparency. But I really do think that it's time. I don't know. Maybe it's because we do these shows every week. Numbers help to discuss talking points. PlayStation does a good job of revealing the things that they want to reveal, but they reveal. I wish Microsoft would reveal more of their numbers. Except for 20 million people stop by to say hello to Forza Horizon 5. It's not really telling. And now we're seeing situations where certain games as a service aren't doing very well at all. So what does it really mean when people go, well, the first week, 25 million people stopped by. They pressed the A button and then they left. Well, you know what I mean? I mean, Forte, I said this example yesterday. People keep saying, well, 25 million people played Forza Horizon that first week. That's great, but it's like having a restaurant saying that 70,000 people showed up in front of it, but nobody came in and bought anything. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean much except for the press. So, when it comes down to it, I hope that we see more numbers from Microsoft as we kind of get going here. The great Slow-Mo Backslap. Slow-Mo, if you don't mind me going to you here, because I know, I don't know how involved you were with Gears multiplayer, but, the Gears talk has kind of came up again. The Coalition's canceled 2 games, right? Now, they've canceled 2 games I guess they were working on smaller titles. They've canceled those, and now they're focusing on Gears 6. Two-headed question here for you. First of all, what do you think about them canceling those games? They've probably been working on them since Gears 5, if not before that. That's kind of a waste of money, time, resources. But on top of that, where should Gears 6 go? Should Gears 6 be a reboot of sorts, or should we continue on with, Kate's story?
I really kind of dislike it when things get left unsaid or unfinished. So look, whether I actually enjoyed Gears 5, the Gears 5 campaign story. Go ahead and finish the trilogy. Like, you clearly have a story arc here. Go ahead and knock that out.
Yeah.
When you try to reboot things or do like a spiritual reboot, but then you're trying to explain away what happened before, it never really works out well. Like, that's what they tried to do with Halo Infinite, where they're just like, oh, everything that happened in Guardians, yeah, we just kind of resolved that off screen. Like, what? Like, that doesn't work. So just go ahead and finish the story. If these, I mean, I don't know anything about these other smaller Gears projects they were working on. If they just weren't looking good, well, good. Cut the cord on it now instead of later, or dropping some, subpar content that no one really wants to play. Go ahead and get those developers that were working on the side project into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to help Gear 6 get out quicker, as far as I'm concerned. So, as far as multiplayer goes, I don't really care about Gears multiplayer like that. I've always thought it was kind of
Yeah.
not just me. I like Gears' stories, and I've played through the trilogy like 5 billion times. But as far as the multiplayer goes, I've never really cared for it.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta be honest. I was kind of hoping for a reboot myself. I do get your point, though, Slow-Mo. There's no sense in stopping the story before we get to the end of the story. So that may be something where I'll just have to wait another iteration.
Right. Like the next Gears game, or maybe they could kind of like have a bridge to a new trilogy or a new Gears game through the use of like an expansion or something. And maybe that expansion could do some new things, or maybe take a look at some of the things they did in the previous trilogy and see what worked and what didn't work, and then attempt something new and see how the player base accepts it, whether they like it or not. And then they can kind of go forward with some better ideas instead of going in blind on the next Gears game. But as far as Gears 6 goes, just end the trilogy. Let's move on. I do think kind of Gears might need to evolve a little bit. I know people hate to hear that, especially Gears. Loyalists of a particular franchise hate to hear that the franchise that's been around for like almost 2 decades needs to evolve. But hey, look, it is what it is. It's 2023 now. You might need to, do some things a little differently.
Yeah. No,
we'll
I hear you. Spawn, I want to go to Spawn on this. Spawn, I'm really interested in your take because, like I said, you cover a lot of this news. And I know that you formulate your own opinion on this. I mean, what is it when you hear, I mean, here it is again, the Coalition working on 2 games. Then all of a sudden, those 2 games kind of get scrapped and they're going back to Gears. We knew they were going to work on Gears. I mean, that's look, no one's falling out of their seat with that information. That was something that we knew. But, this all kind of comes back to, and we'll kind of transition into what's going on with the acquisition deal for a small amount of time on the show. But really, when it comes down to it, is this another situation of mismanagement, again, with Xbox Brass? I mean, you've got a situation where, these two, the company's been working on this. That's a lot of time, money, resources. Not that we need to worry about the time or money. That's their problem. But now we're not going to see a new IP necessarily coming out of there. You've got the Gallagher's team over there that's working on Perfect Dark, and they're having issues. They've had to sub out some work in that situation over there. Rare has now brought on another team while they work on whatever was it, Wild. Pardon me, guys. What is it called?
Everwild.
Everwild. Thank you. While they work on Everwild, they'll have this other team continuing support for Sea of Thieves. Spawn, it's just, it's kind of the old hit after hit after hit. And when you think about it, you're just seeing, it looks like there's just a fumbling of the ball over and over again. Spawn. You could say it. Am I just seeing this and I got to take off these glasses, or is it a situation? I don't wear glasses, but nonetheless, hypothetically, or do you think it's a situation where everything's fine and no need to worry, it's business as usual?
I mean, based on what we've seen, it's hard to really argue the contrary to Microsoft having management issues with their studios. They've provided enough evidence with just 343 alone that they have some problems they have to work out just in the communication and management phase. Yeah. But for the Coalition, I will admit, when I heard that they had 2 projects in development, we don't know what they are. They could have been new IPs. They could have been spin-offs in the Gear series. But I do like the idea of each studio at Microsoft doing a smaller project and then a larger project.
Yep.
So that you end up with a hi-fi rush. But then you also end up with, for Tango, the Evil Within 3 or something. I like the idea of these studios trying different things outside of that what their established franchise is. So the Coalition going to Gears 6 isn't shocking to anyone, but maybe their other project would have been shocking. The only thing I can think of here is those projects mostly existed for them to develop their skills with Unreal Engine 5 because they worked on that Matrix Awakens demo with Epic specifically to do that.
Yeah.
And I assume all of that is preparation training essentially for when they were going to do Gear 6. And who knows, maybe that their other projects just didn't line up and it wasn't working out. And they just said, you know what, we're just going full speed ahead on Gear 6. And we'll also run support for this game over here because Coalition will support a lot of games, especially ones that have multiplayer in it. So it's very possible they said, scrap those 2 projects. This larger team goes to Gear 6. This team goes and helps out with Perfect Dark or Fable or something like that, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking now is they reevaluated and they're like, let's go where the money is.
That's a really good take. Go ahead, David.
Sorry, just to piggyback off that, let's give it a positive spin. Let's you know, we don't know exactly what they were working on, which is a very good point. But what if they were working on another DLC for the last Gears game, and then it's morphed into let's take these ideas and turn it into Gears 6? And it's not the worst thing in the world to go and reboot that franchise, because it'll at least give them some kind of continuity to get their teeth into it and get the game made. You know, one of their biggest issues is their pipeline of production is getting the bigger games built and shipped, and that's more of a management issue than a tech issue. But you know, it may be that they were working on a DLC or a smaller version of something of Gears, and then it's morphed into the next one, and they've jumped on it and said, "Well, let's just do it." So it doesn't have to be doom and gloom all the time. I mean, yes, they've got management issues, but you know, they've got talent over there.
Absolutely. Coalition is probably one of the more talented groups I think they have. I think Obsidian. I think of Coalition. I used to, back in the day, think of the Initiative because they went and grabbed all that high tier talent from so many studios. But I've also noticed that over the years, whether we're talking about sports or gaming, that's not always the case. When you go to grab a bunch of superstars, sometimes you just can't get them all to work. You can't have you can't have like 12 chefs in the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Like the Washington Commanders back in the days.
Correct. So,
Stanton, there's a guy that left 343. Staten.
Yes.
I remember his name. Yeah.
Yeah, Staten.
He left Staten left 343 and is going back to publishing, Xbox Studios publishing or production or something like that. So they've made a change and put somebody who knows how to ship a game into a more centralized position to assist and build a team around. So they've identified part of an issue and they're making changes. As with everything else that they've done and announced in the last couple of weeks, they're actively making changes. Now, whether they're good changes, bad changes, or indifferent, we have to find out. But at least they're making some changes. And if they've said to the coalition, look, your passion projects, put them on the shelf. We need you to go back to basics and build us a game that we know one of our 3 pillars. You know, we shat the bed with Halo. Forza's looking good, but we can't build the future on a racing game. We need one of our big pillars. We need it out there soon. Go and put the effort in and build us something we know will work. And everyone, will go, oh yeah, but Xbox is built on, Halo, Gears, and Forza. Like, who cares?
Right.
Who cares what their mainstay pillar is? They need that thing to live and exist, and they can build a year's worth of game content around it. Depending on how they build it, Gears 6 could be a monster that lives for 2 or 3 years with a couple of DLCs. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. They just need it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a really good point. I like how you always said it's not always, and shout out to people in the chat who are like, Mooch is always it's not that I spin it that negative way. I like how David kind of put a bright shine of hope on that. I do agree with David. I think that the coalition is just immensely talented. I love the work that they do. I don't necessarily like so much of, I kind of like the way Gears 1, 2, and 3 went more than 4, 5, and maybe where 6 is going. I'm not really sure. Make it a little bit more compelling, make the story a little bit, make the characters a little bit more like somebody that you can kind of wrap your mind around. Just like any good book or any good movie, a game's character is essential to its success. I really do believe that. You look at any...
Mooch, a question for you.
Sure,
Do you think for Gear 6, they need to kind of put the focus back on Marcus? Considering, like the way it ended, clearly Marcus's son and... can't remember the black dude's name, but the two of them clearly can't have a big role in the game, considering the way they made the choice there. This game's been out for a few years now, so we can talk about.
You could say,
the fact that
yes,
one of them dies. You make a choice, one of them dies. So, like the way usually what that works, if you look at like other RPGs, like say like a BioWare RPG, if you had to make a choice, or there were particular characters that had the option of dying in your ending. You get into the next game, that person has like a cameo or something.
Right.
Like
Right.
if you made the choice to save them, they show up and say, "Hey, what's up? I'm still alive. What's up, man? All right, I'm out." Because they can't have a true focus in the game because they're optional at that point. So really, the only real characters you got there that are like, I mean, your original squad, the original squad from the original trilogy, and Kate. So
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they should just go back to putting the focus back on Marcus. I don't know. I'm just kind of
no. I mean,
here,
so I'll answer your question real quick. I would actually hope and pray that they do put it, maybe if not the focus on Marcus, but at least co-focus. Get him more involved. And shout out to I'm just looking here in the chat who said it. Ryan Landis says, don't forget everybody, no Rod Ferguson this time. This will be the first time we're without Rod and without Cliffy B. So, not to say that the folks there aren't they're very talented, but remember those are two of the originals that had the concept, the creation, the development, the skill, and the time. And now we're looking at a situation where those folks are not going to be there, and it's going to be very telling. But to answer your question, Slow-Mo, in short, I would say Marcus is the face of the franchise. You know what I mean? And you can go ahead and go as far as you want. You've got Master Chief. You've got Nathan Drake. You've got Kratos. It goes on and on and on. It's just what it is. When you have a face of the franchise, it's very hard for people to separate and play a game without that said person. It's just, it takes a bit away. Whether you guys agree or not, you know it to be true.
Yeah, I mean, they did have Marcus in there, but he became a side character.
Right, he was a side character,
a more of a bit player in the background, which I always, just me personally, I always kind of just like the times where you actually did use Marcus. I was like, yeah, finally, like
yes.
I'm using the man. You know what I'm saying? Like not his completely bland son. Or his equally bland best friend, or Kate's fine. I don't have a problem with Kate, but it's just like the franchise and all the great story beats of the game.
Yes,
come from Marcus. They come from like the original squad and like their story and like you don't anyone who looks back at the last two games and then looks at the original trilogy and compare the story beats, they don't really. There's nothing in 4 and 5 that really hits the same way.
No, I agree, and I like your synopsis there. I think you actually kind of nailed it there, Slow-Mo. Shout out to the great Social Destruct. I see this great super chat here. He says, hello, panel. Bring me GT7 VR2 right effing now. The wait for VR2 sucks. Social Destruct, I'm going to go ahead and move into that topic next. Tactical Gamer says, question to the panel. Why do you think we always hear stories about a Xbox canceling or rebooting a game every other month versus PlayStation staying on course? Well, Tactical, first of all, it's a great question, but I'll actually take a page out of Spawn Wave and what he said a moment ago with transparency. It's funny. Microsoft doesn't reveal their numbers, but they're very transparent with their organization, their teams, and their announcing of games or games cancellation. Sony may be having those same internal issues, maybe not to the same degree, but you don't hear about it, right? Coming from being in the Italian world, Sony, they don't talk about their dirty laundry. Microsoft, every time Phil does an interview, he's literally apologizing for something. But Sony's usually just double downing on their, even if it was an error, they're like, yep, we really like that error, and we think with time you guys will enjoy it too. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, all right, that's an interesting take. So it's just two different processes that I see that these two teams kind of come out and do. And again, to Spawn, to go back to your example, and Nintendo gives 0 Fs. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, so this game sold about 5 copies. Deal with it. Then their next game sells 70 million copies, which they're about to explode on. But yeah, I mean, Spawn, I don't want to use your words and explain it for you. You agree with what I was saying there? You think maybe that where Microsoft's not so transparent in their numbers, they're extremely see-through when it comes to issues and gaming problems and, just games in development hell.
I also think they just in terms of their games getting out there, a lot of that information just seems to flow onto the internet as opposed to Nintendo and Sony. Like they both have their stuff locked down pretty well. Whereas I feel like I'm constantly hearing about stuff going on at Microsoft Studios without any issues. And it might be because Microsoft being an American company, it might be easier for the press and all that here to get information. Whereas Sony and Nintendo, it may be a bit harder to pry that info from. Especially, I know Nintendo is very, very secretive about it. That's why it was weird when they showed up one day on YouTube and said they rebooted Metroid Prime 4, because the only reason they had to tell us that is because it was going to be 8 years since they first announced it. Eventually, people would just start asking questions. So otherwise, there are games that slip out occasionally. Like there was a sequel to 1-2 Switch that apparently has not seen the light of day because it was so bad that internal testing called it all kinds of crazy things. So any of these games that you see that release probably had 4, 5, 6, 10 versions of it that never saw the light of day as they're trying to focus group test and figure things out. So, and then on top of that, there are probably a lot of projects that just stay and get canceled.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And I totally agree with that. I'm going to switch over here to PSVR 2 because I see so many people are hyped about it in the chat. And I wonder if this hype that I'm seeing in the chat and the hype that I see on the internet is legitimately what we'll see as it transpires into sales and how the actual unit does. PSVR continues to impress every gaming news outlet. And then, of course, we'll get into how the rumors were debunked that Sony was cutting production. They've come out and said that they have not cut production. So Forte, I'll go to you on this, Forte, just because of pre-orders, things of that nature. So you can't go and pre-order that yet at GameStop, I don't believe. Is that true, Forte?
Nope, only PlayStation Store is the only place you can get them right now.
Now, you know, Forte, I know that you're a big fan, naturally, but I'm actually a big fan of GameStop, too. I want GameStop to be around forever. I still think it's a great meeting place for gamers to have great conversation. It's also just a wonderful place for gamers to enjoy buying games and discussing games. But listen, on top of that, someone wrote me and said, Mooch, the main reason Sony's been doing this, which what they did with the DualSense Edge, and they're going to be doing with this headset, is by them having control of it, they're able to avoid the scalpers and the bots and all that stuff. I mean, do you agree with that, Forte, or do you think it's another reason why GameStop and Best Buy and other brick and mortars won't get their hands on this product for maybe said months down the road?
Well, I think it's twofold. That's part of it, but I also think the major part of it is the fact that usually when stuff like this goes live, you got to think about what usually happens. Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, even GameStop, you'll start getting cancellation orders and stuff from people saying, hey, they canceled my thing because retailers start over promising these units and stuff. And then what happens is they got to go in and they cancel that stuff, even though that really doesn't hurt Sony on the end because that's the retailer's point of view.
Yeah.
It still looks bad when it comes to the, to PlayStation, because people are going to first thing they're going to say is, well, why didn't PlayStation make enough of them and this and that, blah, blah, blah. So for the most part, it's Sony saying that we have full control of exactly who gets these, like how many of these systems we put out there for people to buy, and we don't have to deal with the middleman on top of that. So I think it's just more of just a quality control situation where they're like, we're going to make 2 million of these things. We're not going to make more. We're not going to make less. We're gonna basically tip expectations. You got to think there's 31 million PS5s out there, so they're not even going to cover even 5% of the people that's probably going to want this thing. And they just want to make sure that they can satisfy the people that are the amount that they have out there and not over deliver or over promise anything that people can't get. I think that's the biggest part of it, but it definitely does help that scalping and everything like that. And then you can see it worked really well when it came to the PS5, even though they did do sales at retail themselves, but they also did really, really well selling them underneath their own umbrella. And they're doing it with the DualSense Edge controller too. So it just seems to be the direction that they're going in for a lot of their stuff. They did announce that stuff will hit certain retailers at a later date.
Yeah.
We just don't know what that later date is at this point.
No, Forte, thanks for that insight into it. Myself personally, I know this will probably warm Forte. I waited to get the DualSense Edge. I'll be buying it this month at GameStop. You guys have a phenomenal warranty package with controllers that is unmatched.
I switch out my Elite controller every year, even if there's nothing wrong with it, because the way I look at it, I'd rather pay $50 a year to have a controller that works all the time than not have one.
No, you guys have a zero. That's the opposite of zero tolerance. You guys have zero issues. If you come in, you can bring in half of the damn controller, and it legitimately they'll give you another one. So I'll be buying my Edge, and I wanted to kind of talk about that, but I want to go to Pile first. Spawn, I'm going to get to you on PSVR and the Edge. You did an outstanding breakdown, Spawn, of the DualSense Edge, and I'm going to be buying. But Pio, I want to ask you real quick a question. And the reason that you see a lot of gaming news channels like Spawn's and others that kind of have been blossoming and growing is because the more and more we see some of the bigger gaming journalist sites, they go ahead and they have these articles that come out. And Pio, you remember the debacle that was 2-3 days ago with the cutting of production, and then Sony had to come out and completely debunk that. It seems to me that PSVR 2 will do well for and it's funny, a lot of people don't like when I say it, niche still category, right? VR is still not what you would call mainstream. But when it comes down to it, I think you're going to see decent numbers, Pile, when it comes to VR sales. And I do think PSVR 2 will outsell the numbers of PSVR 1. What was your take, Pile, on two things? A, the product itself, are you getting it? And number two, when you keep on logging on to Twitter or social media every morning and you see an article come out and then you have to wait 3 hours for either Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo to squash it and say that's not accurate.
So let's start with the if I'm getting PSVR 2.
Yes.
Now here, obviously inflation is a thing, and the PSVR 2 with Horizon, where I live, will be around 800 euros. So
yes.
Just say $800. Yeah, it is way overpriced here. In most places in Europe, that's how it is. So I think in Europe and Japan, you're gonna see softer sales. But in America, it's like 550, which is not a big deal. Like if that was 550 or 600 euros, I would not get it no matter what. But I need to wait for more games because right now I only want to play one game, and I'm not getting a whole VR set for just one game, right? So I want more games from it. That's first off.
That's
now,
fair.
Yeah, with the confirmation, when I saw that come out, I was like, it is so weird because how would he know that? I know Jason Schreier knows rumors, right? But for this was I was questioning it a little bit because it was so weird to me. It was such a random story. It was not like he interviewed a guy or someone else who worked at Naughty Dog or Santa Monica about the studio or something, or you heard a rumor about this game being worked on. How would he know specifically about that side of Sony? So it's who's gonna tell them that? Obviously, the production thing that goes into investors. So if Sony was gonna cut down on PSVR thing, they would publicly say that in the investor meeting because Jason Schreier is obviously well trusted. They had to come out and deconfirm this so people don't.
Just so you know, Pao, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it wasn't Jason Schreier that reported. It was Bloomberg, but it was not Jason Schreier.
Oh, it wasn't Jason. Oh, okay. I always associate him with him. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. But still, Bloomberg, the whole site, that's very that site is very reliable when it comes to news. At least in the last 2 years.
Yes, I agree. That's why when people saw that, it wasn't necessarily that far-fetched to run with the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, go ahead and finish, by the way, Pao. I only wanted to interrupt you because I wanted to just set it straight that it wasn't Jason.
No. But when it comes to these types of stories, you see them with Nintendo. Every time there's a rumor about a Switch hardware, they have to deconfirm it because of investors. They have to deconfirm those things.
That's a good point. David, do you hear what Pio's saying? Does that hold water? Is that something? If something like that drastic is cut, is that something that we're going to hear at the investors meeting in the quarterly reports? Are we going to hear that PSVR 2 production has been cut in half because of low pre-sale figures? Is this true?
Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Normally I would say yes, but unfortunately YouTube is not allowing it anymore, David. So you'll have to use you can use the first letter of the word if you'd like. Yeah.
That's all right. I'll try and keep it simple. If there was an issue, yes, we would have seen it. We definitely would have seen it, and they have not changed their forecast. The only major events that PlayStation has in this quarter is the Hogwarts Legacy game launch, which isn't first party, so they'll only get their percentage cut out of that, and the PSVR 2 launch. And that's the big thing that's happening this quarter. They haven't changed their forecast. So they're expecting they didn't change their production, they confirmed that. So put a line through that idea, and they haven't changed their forecast on their sales. So again, these are, in air quotes, anonymous sources that have spoken to the people writing articles, and basically they're just pulling it out of their rear end half the time because there's no substantiation of it. But then there's no repercussions for saying stuff like that, because other than those of us who read those financial reports, has there been any retraction? Has there been any correction? Has there been anything reported to debunk those things other than somebody else running a story saying Sony put out a comment that was 2 sentences that says we haven't changed production?
Right.
Yeah, what Pyro's saying is pretty fair. The price of them isn't, like, they're not cheap. This technology is not cheap, full stop. And I can understand that it may see a softening in certain markets where it's not cheap. I mean, you try and buy one in Australia and you're basically selling your kidney and half your liver to be able to afford it.
It's true.
But having said that, yes, the US is going to be all right, and other places will be all right. The one thing that we're not aware of is China. And China is an evolving market for gaming.
Yes.
Even though it's been around forever, it's an evolving market for gaming. They've got some really wild and crazy laws around it, but they are fanatically going nuts for VR.
Really? Okay.
The demand for the PSVR 2 is quite substantial. In that market, it's actually quite cost effective for the technology that's in it. Yeah, is it overpriced for the tech that's involved in it? That's debatable. I don't think it is. But then again, we're looking at some cutting edge stuff. I mean, you look at the comments they've had around GT7. That thing looks phenomenal. Running at a locked 120 FPS, 4K. Your head's, it doesn't matter where you're sitting in your room or standing in your room, it'll detect your head movements. Some of the tech that's in there is insane. Same with Horizon Forbidden West. The interactions, you can interact with the entire environment. You can grab things, hold things, throw them up, throw them around. You can pick up arrows that you shot and put them back in your quiver and stuff like that. So there's a heap of cool stuff that's happening with those first-party games. And there's third-party games that are supporting it. You've got over 30 games at launch. There's 70-plus games already confirmed.
Yeah.
There's free updates for all. I mean, there's enough there for an individual to sit down and go, right, somebody who's already got a VR headset to go, right, I want to move over to this new tech, and I'm going to pay the money to do it. And there's evidence of that happening already.
I agree with you.
Quest,
I agree with you, David.
Yeah, sorry, but this is a bit telling as well. The Quest second-hand market in the UK, at the end of November, you could get a second-hand Quest set up with no games, with the whole, like the headset and the controls and the whatnot, for £200. Now they're selling them for less than £80 because everybody's offloading them in preparation for getting a PSVR 2 or the Quest 2, which is a long way away. But they're offloading them and no one's buying them in the second-hand market. But the same can't be said for the PSVRs because people aren't really offloading them. They're effectively just throwing them in the bin because the tech's so old. It's almost irrelevant.
Yes.
But that's a side note. But the demand is there. But it's, as I was saying, it comes down to the individual to sit down and say, right, that's what it's going to cost me. Am I prepared to put up that kind of money for what kind of experience? And it feeds back into some of the issues that they've had. You can't market VR if it's an interactive or an immersive experience because everybody's experience will be their own individual experience. It's not like playing, Forza Horizon 5 as an example, or God of War Ragnarok or whatever. You can't just throw it up on YouTube and go, hey, this is the gameplay.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. This is what it'll play like. Press these buttons, off you go. Because there's so much going on. You've got the head pressure sensors, you've got the different controllers, you've got all this other stuff happening. And it's also heavily customizable for each individual that the immersion experience is completely unique for each individual. Now, it comes down to how much do you want to pay to access that experience across all these different types of games.
Correct.
I think that's where the issue is going to be. Not every market is about to crack into a recession. There are a lot of markets that aren't even going to touch a recession. So it comes down to personal circumstance. And, hey, look, if they sell 2 million units in the first 2 months, that's good. Who cares if it's niche?
I think 2 million units.
Put the money into it.
I think 2 million units in the first, even in the first year, is still phenomenal. Or maybe projecting it. I think they're projecting it over the first year or so. I will say this much: just like the PS5, just like the Xbox Series X, when it comes to PSVR 2, it's the games. Now you're right, David. It's going to be a little harder for them to actually sell. It's harder, in my opinion, to sell PSVR or show it off because it really is your interaction with the game, how you live in the world. It's not like, controlling Kratos, right? Where everybody does basically the same thing. This is a different situation. You may go into it with bows and arrows with VR. Another person may go into it with, guns, and it's a little bit different with the interaction and how you deal with the environment. Spawn, I got a question for you here, and this is an interesting one because it's great to have you on the show because you literally in the news world of gaming. When you see this, and let's be honest, it happens once every 2 or 3 months where a big publication comes out and says, hey, this is happening. Well, I mean, rightfully so. I don't blame anybody for running with it. They are a big publication. They've got at least more right than wrong in the past. But I mean, should there be a little bit more due diligence, Spawn? I know when you're doing your show, I do it on this show. I'll say, I don't know, or this is rumor, this is speculation. Should things like that be said, before we really, really kind of run to the presses, especially when you have that much weight behind you in a Bloomberg or an IGN, just mentioning names out loud? I mean, what do you think when you see this, Spawn? Because you're reporting on news as well.
For the report from Bloomberg for the PSVR 2?
Yeah, the halving or the cutting of half of the production because of low pre-order numbers, which was debunked.
Well, they came out and said that the forecast was halved, not the production. For Bloomberg. So basically, this is Takashi Machizuki. He talked to suppliers. Suppliers feel like the pre-orders are coming in soft and that they may hear from Sony that they don't need to produce. So let's say they produce 2 million, because it seems like they're going to.
Right.
They believe that Sony may not come back and say, okay, now let's do 4 million and keep upping it. There appears to be softer pre-orders than Sony may have been expecting. And he would get that info from different suppliers. He's done this in the past with suppliers and then kind of move to conclusions from that. So I do believe there's a gap in there somewhere from the conclusion that he got to versus the evidence that he has.
Okay.
But so when Sony responded and said we have not halved our production, they're correct. They haven't. Like they're still going to produce the PSVR 2 headset. I will say though, you can still buy the PSVR 2 headset on their site. I would have thought this thing would have been sold out on their site as we approach launch day, and it still might. But that's the only concern I'd have when it comes to the demand, is that it's so freely available. Like I ordered mine last week on their site, and they were like, "Yeah, it'll be in their launch window. You'll get it."
Yeah.
So I ordered the Horizon bundle.
Yep, me too.
And I ordered the charging station.
Same here.
I'm set up and ready to go. But I did think it was a little strange because the PS5 system, impossible to find for 2 years. The headset rolling up to release. Just go ahead and just put your info in. You're good to go.
Don't get me wrong. So, Spawn, you make a great point, but I do think that ultimately there's two things. First of all, we're getting past the shortage issues. We're getting past that. And secondly, this is something that's not going to it's not going to. I mean, no matter how well it does do, it's not going to have the demand of the initial consoles. So I wasn't as shocked.
On that a little bit.
Say again, Forte.
Beg to differ on that. Spawn is right. I feel the reason that you got to think about PSVR 1.
Okay.
It's a couple of different things that they did here. Now, we were talking about how pre-orders are being handled. This might be the downside to them going directly through Sony themselves.
Correct.
Because I remember vividly a week or maybe a couple weeks before launch, retail reps going to stores demonstrating PSVR before it even came out.
Yep.
Like I literally had people pre-order that thing on the spot because they got a chance to try it.
That's right.
Now, that is something that's not going on right now. God rest all the retail reps that PlayStation doesn't have anymore. But I think that is a significant part of this. You know, I always try to tell people with VR, 9 out of 10 people are going to love VR. It's just going to come down to if they can actually go through the tolerances of all the different effects they put you through. Now, with all the different sensors and the higher FPS that you have per eye, I think a lot of that stuff is going to be alleviated. You're still going to have people that's going to have issues doing it, but it's not going to be as drastic as it was, you know, in the older versions of VR that we had.
Right.
So I people not being able to try this thing out at all right now and basically just jumping on something that's, and then you got to think the price point. You know, I think the original PSVR was $349.99.
I think it dropped at 400 and
yeah, it dropped at 400, then they dropped it to 349.
Yeah.
Then they started doing bundles for 349. Then I think the headset dropped to 299 by the time it was all said and done. But it's just ultimately that people can't get their hands on this, and it's not something that you 100% know you want until you actually have a chance to try it. It's not a console where you know, like, oh, put this on my TV and it's going to give me a beautiful picture. You don't really know what you're getting, even though everybody knows what VR is to this point. So that's why I think Oculus did so well, because they have these different stations that you could try it and stuff at. You could walk in certain Best Buys or in places like that and try it. You can't do that right now with PSVR. So people are taking a wait and see approach. And the funny things that are going to happen is if this thing is as good as they say it is, word of mouth is going to spread on it. And then people are going to want to run out to get it then. But then, like Spawn said, then you're going to be having these manufacturers coming out saying, well, are you going to re-up? And then Sony's like, well, the demand really wasn't there. So now they got to scramble to get more out there in the world.
Yeah.
And that's something that's going to happen over time. So I think they're committed to the 2 million right now. But those pre-order numbers are real soft. The fact that you can log in on their website and still get one for day one, well, launch window, you know, is kind of interesting. But I don't think it's like a bad thing. I just think it's a symptom of where we are in the world today with the direction that Sony decided to go in when it came to like their retail footprint, and they don't have enough, you know, wanting and willing buyers out there to buy because they don't know what it really is yet.
My one concern is that well, I would like the VR2 headset to sell well, because as soon as that first VR headset started to tail off a bit, Sony just lost interest and was like,
lost interest,
you know what? We're good. And then we're kind of left as the early adopters like, oh, all right. And now it's, you know, it's a more expensive device, and we see the potential with it because technology-wise, it's very impressive for the price.
Right.
I would like to see Sony go, all right, let's get some of our talented first-party studios. Let's see what kind of experiences they can come up with. New intellectual properties, spin-offs like Horizon Call of the Mountain. Let's really take advantage of this thing.
Yes.
But if it's out of the gate, pre-orders are soft. Like, we're trying to convince people to get this thing, but we're not quite there. You know, let's take it easy on the software for now and see if it catches up. My concern is that they then just lose interest and then they move on again. So I would like to see the VR2 headset do well.
Yeah, and I Spawn, that's a concern I have too. David, I'll give you the mic in a second. I have that same concern. I hope that's not the case. The only shining, glimmering hope in this case is that with Quest 2, Quest 3 coming down the road, say what you will about Meta and all of that, but between PSVR, Meta, Quest, and Valve's equipment, you know, the HTC, it literally, it's still a niche category, but it's grown tremendously from those early days of PSVR, right? So, Spawn, I agree with you. I'm in the same boat as you with concern. I do need to say this. If anyone's ever listening from Sony, you never know who's listening, do not take your foot off the pedal of the software. You have to continue to do things like you're doing with Call of the Mountain, with other franchises you own. You know, I don't care what it is. It could be a spin-off of The Last of Us. I don't give a crap what it is. A 6-hour VR experience in the world of a post-apocalyptic pandemic like that? Sign me up. I think you'd sign a lot of people up. David, did you want to speak on this before we change subjects?
Yeah, sorry, just quickly touch on, I agree with a lot of stuff that Forte was saying, but I also think you need to give some credit probably not the right word, but we need to give some acknowledgement, is a better word, to the fact that you can't just have these massive come and try stations in a lot of countries post-pandemic anymore. So that would have an impact. And again, if you can't go and try the damn thing, how are you going to know? So that's probably one of the biggest hamstringing points.
Yep.
The other piece is not every country has got the issue of you can only pre-order direct from PlayStation, because we don't have PlayStation Direct in Australia, so we've had to go through our local EB Games, which is the same GameStop.
Certain retailers,
So what that does is it creates a time change or time shift in knowing how much demand is actually there. If for all the major markets that are ordering through PS Direct, they will have real-time information, like to the second, what the demand actually looks like in terms of what they're doing, and they can adjust production or redistribute production. In that case, you can't pre-order one in Australia at the moment. We're done with our pre-orders. Our allotment is finished, and it's the same for a couple of other countries. But in the more major markets, if they're allowing, if the pre-orders aren't sold out yet, say for the US, the UK, or whatnot, there may be scope, put it that way, to suggest that because they're getting direct information and not having to wait for feedback through the retailers and the wholesalers, that they can be adjusting production to sort that out. Now, we might only be talking about a couple 100,000 units, which is a sizable percentage in the window. But I think that detracts from the old school feeling of, is this thing going to be big at launch or not? And if the retailers are going, well, we'll just order 20% more in case word of mouth takes off. Because the retailers aren't going to have huge amounts of stock on shelf. And Forte, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not going to have enough there if this word of mouth takes off. You've got all of a sudden,
None at all.
So it's going to take away that second phase boom that used to come after the things being out for a month, which is sad.
Well, the other thing I want to discuss, David, that you were talking about, Forte, outstanding points as well as far as the brick and mortar goes, besides ordering from Sony, is the price.
The last thing I will say before you move on is it is an opportunity that might come for the fact that just like when you got the financials for Sony for third quarter of this year, you might have to wait a full year for this, because let's be for real, people ain't got money like that no more. You just saw 7.1 million, units ship and had record sales when it came to the system itself. It might be a slow burn for them to actually, see exactly what the PSVR market is going to look like, because a lot of those people might not buy it until next year. So when the numbers come out for 2023 in the third quarter for the holidays at the end of this year, you might get a real sense of where the market sits on VR, because at that point, people have been sitting on their PlayStations for a while. Kids, just like Oculus really didn't take off until like that second or third holiday. So you're going to really see what's going to happen next year. It just sucks that, for people that's getting it day one, it's going to probably be a huge shortage, because they're going to get bought up initially when they first come out.
That's true, and I do think we're going to see that wave hit with VR next holiday, right? I mean, right now you are talking about, and I pardon me for not remembering who it was. It was either Spawn or it was David that mentioned, generally in February, people are still paying their Christmas bills. This is a very, very interesting time where people are going to go out and spend an extra $500. But the one difference, though, everyone keeps saying this, but there is an asterisk, folks. Everyone keeps saying, well, the original PSVR was $400. This one's $500. And perhaps a big fan of always doing the conversion. First of all, money's not exactly the same as it was back then. Number two, a stronger
foreign exchange rate.
That's correct.
Or FX, as Falky calls it.
That's right.
Actually, that's what it is.
But a stronger point was, though, the headset. You had to buy the sticks. You had to have the camera. Right? There was things. This here is legitimately everything's in the box. You don't have to buy another alternative device to make it work or work better. So that's the thing. You needed the light sticks with the original. Those were $50. And Forte, correct me where I'm wrong. The camera was $30. So this was very close to that $500 mark, much like this one is here at launch for the PSVR. So it really is an apples to apples comparison. We need to bring that up. It's not just the same situation.
Yeah, but we already had those sticks and the camera laying around from playing Sports Champions all day on the PS3.
Now speak for yourself there, Spawn. I had actually I actually tried PSVR with the controller, and that was not the way to experience it. So I was one of those folks that had to go out and buy it afterwards. And by the way, I wasn't begrudgingly, I wasn't upset. I just went and purchased them. You know, literally, gaming's an expensive hobby, folks. We say this a lot on the show. It is a true story. I do think with time, too, this will, just like PSVR 1 did, I think PSVR 2 will also take a drop in price. Let me go over here and ask the great Slow-Mo Backslap. Slow-Mo, let me ask you a question here, because, and again, I'm going to say this is reported a rumor. I don't think anyone's concrete come out and said this has happened, but the rumor out there, or the word on the street, is Amazon's buying Tomb Raider for roughly $600 million. And we're going to get into the EU and the antitrust warning and all that stuff in a moment. So, but I did want to discuss this with you, Slow-Mo. I mean, Slow-Mo, I don't mind anybody buying anything for the most part, but when you see Amazon's going to grab Tomb Raider, and Tomb Raider is a beloved franchise by many, and Amazon doesn't necessarily have the pedigree behind them to support something such as this, I guess I'll ask you two questions. How do you feel about Amazon getting their hands on this IP? And number two, do you think they're going to go ahead and just only put it on their Luna, or are they going to be a third party distributor and get that everywhere to make money?
Well, they've already released, I think, at least one or maybe two games already that come from Amazon first party studio, and all those games have been multi-plat.
Yep.
So they likely the Tomb Raider, and they even announced because they're already publishing the Tomb Raider that Crystal Dynamics is doing, and that's multi-plat as well.
Okay.
So if they really are acquiring the IP at the price that they're acquiring it for, it's more than just gaming for them. They have a streaming service that they pour a ton of money into, and really seems like money isn't a problem whatsoever in regards to how much they fund the exclusive content that is in Prime Video.
Yeah.
And then they could do movies with Tomb Raider, as you know, there's been Tomb Raider movies already, at least 3 of them.
Yes.
So the IP is way more valuable to them to say it would be to say like Microsoft. They don't really have their hands in all of those different areas. So I think they care more about that than just the gaming side of things. But on the gaming side of things, it seems they have a very different approach, even though it's typically kind of like very similar to what Google was doing with Stadia, but a different approach in regards to how they run their studios and where they expect those games to be, because their games are all on Steam and they're and things like that. They don't mind publishing Lost Ark, that was is developed by Smilegate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they published that over on the Western Hemisphere. That game, that they didn't say, hey, this gotta be only a part of Luna. It's on everything that it should be on. So I think the same thing will happen with Tomb Raider, and I don't want to pass judgment on them and think that just because they are inexperienced in this that they can't get it together and be a decent publisher. As long as they are supplying the developers with what they need and making sure things are progressing well, I think that they'll do fine. But that said, there are probably going to be some pitfalls and some issues here and there with that. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Regardless, if it does turn out that this 600 million is exactly what it is, man, did Square Enix just give up like a bunch of stuff for
nothing,
next to nothing. I mean, 300 million, and then just one IP out of that 300 million that you sold, 3 studios, 50 IP to, and the people you sold it to have doubled what
was it Embracer Group? Was it Embracer Group?
Yeah, Embracer Group. Yeah, Embracer Group has doubled that with just one IP. That's crazy.
Yeah, they've literally made their money back and then some. So the rest now they're just using house money.
So I do want to mention
the
story sounds really weird with 600 million. Like I think everyone looked at that kind of sideways. Like this doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So I did want to look into it a bit more after I had talked about the story some, and Embracer would be out of Sweden, so they would probably use the Swedish krona.
Yep.
And I kind of think, because they mentioned they're not 100% sure on what currency it was that traded hands or was part of the deal. I sort of think it's the Swedish krona, which $600 million of that to dollars would be about $57 million. That to me makes more sense. Although I will still say Square still missed out, because basically the story goes that Embracer is leasing Tomb Raider, so Amazon can do what they want, whether it's publish a game like they're going to, or I assume make a streaming series or merchandise or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
But that's still pretty good. You take that, all those studios, all the developers off their hands with all of those intellectual properties, and you immediately take one and get back a fifth of the money you put out, just like that.
Yes.
That's not too bad.
No.
Yeah. The distribution rights, I think is the correct term for doing something like that.
That's interesting. And Spawn, good on you to do a little digging there, a little investing. And like you said take that also with a grain of salt, but you're doing your own due diligence. I think that puts things better perspective. But even if they're leasing it out for, like you said, for $57 million US,
Square could have done that.
Square could have done that, right? Like rent these out. What are you doing? It just goes to show us.
No, sorry.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry about the frigging delay. I don't mean to cut everyone off. Square could have done it, but let's be realistic. Square weren't interested, and I'd much rather have someone like Square offload an IP for bugger all, and effectively lose out on that side of it, to give it to somebody else who actually wants to do something with it and make something of it. There's no way Square was going to do anything more than what they had, and they certainly weren't going to invest in movies or streaming shows or games or anything more with that IP.
That is true. And then also Square would have did what they normally do, which is have some really astronomical sales figures for what they expected it to do. It not reach that, even though it sells well, and then throw that dev under the bus.
Can you imagine your game selling 9 million copies and you say it's disappointing?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
well, look what they did with Crystal Dynamics in the last game they made. Is that how I'm glad Square sold them, because they might actually get an opportunity to show what they can do with the support that they get. Because Square's not focused on Western. Square's been focused on Japan and their Japanese stuff, because that's what makes them money. How was Tomb Raider ever going to stack up asking for funding against Final Fantasy 16 or a Dragon Quest game, or the next, whatever their JRPG is that just makes them money hand over fist? There's no way it was going to happen. I'm glad. I really am glad that Square got screwed over when they sold that one. Embracer got it cheap, and that we're actually going to get something decent out of it.
Great.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, actually, because a lot of these IP could just sit in a trunk and never be utilized again. And there were some, I believe the Shadow of the Tomb Raider didn't fare too well in sales, right? I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that was the one that they said didn't quite do well.
That was 9 million.
That was the 9 million one, Spawn?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
How was 9 million bad?
Like, I don't know.
Like,
I don't...
Tomb Raider 2013 was like 14 million or something like that.
I mean, like,
and they said that was a disappointment too. I remember that. I was just like, what? Like,
so, like, was it disappointment? Like, did it meet like their financial expectations, or was it disappointment like they didn't mean money, or like they didn't make any money at all in it? Because
it had to have been that. Like, the expense for that game must have been some crazy astronomical amount for that to make any kind of sense.
Yeah. But what if they sold like 10 million at like $5 though, or something like that?
Yeah,
I mean, that could be the other thing. Yeah, maybe it's sold.
Reboot. I'm trying to say it sold in the Humble Bundle.
It was 14.5 million for that one. Rise of the Tomb Raider did just under 12 million, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider did just under 9. Like
just okay. No, but I agree with.
They're used to losing money, so.
I agree with the panel. If you're going to call 9 million chump change nothing, wow. Okay, well then
borrow some of it.
Exactly. I borrow just a smidgen of that.
Go ahead. It comes down to their return on investments. Is how they work out whether they've had a success or not, right? And there's a lot of assumptions that go into what they want. Now, if they're saying that we're going to spend $100 million making a game over 4 years, that's $25 million a year. To as a budget to sink into whatever. We made it for $100 million. We sell however many millions of copies. We make $200 million profit on it, right? That's 100% ROI. But that's not what these companies aim at. They're aiming somewhere between 25 to 35% ROI on these things. So the numbers don't have to be huge,
right, in
terms of what they're getting. But it's not, return on investment isn't based off total revenue, it's based off profit. So if you're selling a game for $70, but you as a publisher are only getting $25 per game, to get 30% ROI on 100 million, you got to sell a lot of copies.
That's right.
So you either reduce the amount of money you put into the game, which is what Nintendo does and why they make stupidly good ROI on their games, and then they sell millions of the bloody things anyway. Or you do the other side of the coin, which is similar to what PlayStation does, is yes, they have big budget, big impact games, but their ROI is reduced down significantly. Some of them are at 10 or 12.5% ROI for some of their really big budget games. And then if they have these massive blowouts like they did with God of War Ragnarok, that's just cream on top. So it's setting expectations. And Square seems to set these ridiculously... There was no way Tomb Raider was ever going to perform anything like what a Final Fantasy game does. It just doesn't happen. Or Dragon Quest games, or any of those other ones. They benchmark them all to this upper echelon, and most of the Western games have failed to reach it. Because unlike the JRPG section for Square and Capcom and all the other ones that exist in JRPGs, the fans are tied to those series and they buy those series religiously.
Yes.
But on the Western side, you bump out Tomb Raider and put that against Uncharted. They're not likely to buy both of them. They'll pick one and stick one. So, you know, it's the markets are quite different, and Square doesn't adjust for that most of the time. And that's how we end up where we are.
It's funny you said that and you made that point. I'll make a quick reference here. Usually I make it with food, but it's still in the food and restaurant business. You know, and my numbers are old here, so David, you can correct me. But one of the businesses, there's a reason that Starbucks charges $7 a coffee and they have the no questions asked policy. You can literally order a $7 coffee from Starbucks, turn around, drop the drink on the ground and go, oops. And they go, no problem. We'll give you another one. They may even do it again if you drop the second cup. The reason being is the coffee bean is literally a 300 or 400% profit markup. Point being here is Nintendo absolutely kills it on their ROI because they don't put hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars into games, and yet they still sell 100 million copies of games. So their return on investment is absolutely through the roof.
Their return on investment is because they don't drop prices.
That too, the Great Gaming Forte with an outstanding point. That I think Mario Brothers, the original, is still $60. That's a true statement. I don't know how they do it, but they do, and we just keep buying. By the way, I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first in line, Forte, for that the Tears of the Kingdom that's coming out in May.
Think about it. How many companies do you know will literally actively tell people, "Hey, this game's only available for 6 months. We're not going to sell it anymore. We're going to take it off our store." But we know a lot of people still want to buy this game.
Yes.
How many companies do you know do stuff like that? By the way, that game right now is going for $60, $70 if you trade it in, selling for 120 online.
Wow. Right? This is wild. It's wild.
That's why I have 3 copies of that game sealed, just sitting there.
Absolutely love it. Love it. Shout out to the great Elemental P.O. Great to see Elemental P.O. back. He says, Mooch, just wanted to say what's up. Great to see your face on the Last of Us review shows. Keep up the Lord's work, brother. I'm going to do the best that I can. You know, it was funny. I went on there and I did stream on cam, and they're like, oh, you have a face. I'm like, I do. Thank God. That being said, I want to go to the great Slow-Mo backslap here, guys. Slow-Mo, this is where you shine on DPS, on Twitter. What is going on? Shill. No, he's not.
That's where he shines. He's a shill.
Oh, come on, BRAP. He's phenomenal. The great Slow-Mo backslap is opinionated, and it generally, I can say, nothing's absolute Slow-Mo, but I really like your takes on all this. And this is one of them. The fake outrage. The fake outrage out there right now. Can you please help me? I'll even be the first to say it, because a lot of Xbox guys will say, Mooch, you don't defend Xbox. I will here. I think this requiring to be online for Redfall is a lot of fake outrage. But am I wrong in that, Slow-Mo? What's the big deal? Where is it that you would have a problem with it? And where's
it doesn't affect a ton of people. It is something.
What's the problem with it, Slow-Mo?
Quite annoying. Let's say you just moved into a new place and you don't have your internet quite yet. You're probably not going to be able to play that game even. Like if you really only intend on playing Redfall solo, having to always be online. Of course, yes, this is like 2023, and a lot of people are online. But then again, we also don't have this, like the infrastructure of the United States when it comes to broadband internet is still trash. So like it really kind of depends on the person. But the fact that it is a single player game and it's still always online, it's not a huge deal. At least not as huge a deal as the other issue that I have with Redfall at the moment, which is the whole co-op aspect. That's my bigger problem.
Me too.
Like the whole always online is I have Verizon Five.
The Borderlands killer.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But it's just it's like the whole the co-op thing where only the host gets progress for the content that you're doing, the missions that you're doing.
Yeah, I
with your
hate
friends.
that. Hate that.
That really kind of makes it so like I know people who are already like, I don't know if I wouldn't want to play this game with friends. And especially if you are the kind of person that like your only interest in playing this game was to play it with friends. But now, like, are you still going to play the game, or are you still as hyped for the game as you once were? And frankly, I just don't understand how developers are still making games today where they don't allow you to have your own progress towards, like, get your own progress towards content that you complete with friends.
Yep.
We've seen this already with games like Borderlands. Borderlands 2 did this. Borderlands 1 did this over a decade ago.
That's right.
Like in Borderlands, in throughout the entire Borderlands franchise, if say Mooch, you join me and I'm further along in the game, but we played some content together for a couple of hours, we go our separate ways. You continue on with your story, sure, at wherever you were at, but when you get to the part where you did with me, Borderlands will pop up and be like, hey, here's a little box that says you did this already. Do you want to continue to do this? If not, cool. We'll skip you ahead to what you haven't done yet, or you could do it again if you want to. Or if we all just start in the game all on our own and we started from the very beginning, we get halfway through the game, I drop out, but you want to keep playing, your progress up to that point is still there regardless of who was hosting the game. Like this shouldn't be this difficult. And it's when I play a lot of co-op games with friends and PvE content with other friends, it's frustrating when you're trying to like get around that. I play Remnant from the Ashes with my friend Luca, and it's like we really enjoyed the game, but it was frustrating having to do the same content over again because one of us didn't get credit for beating like the 2 or 3 bosses the night before.
And I'm glad you bring that up. It was the same thing with State of Decay 2. Shout out to the great Sully that did MNC Mornings with us. Me, Crap. Luca was actually there too. Shout out to All Day. We were playing State of Decay 2, and like whoever was the host was who got natural progress. Whoever was not had to go and do those same missions again. And I don't know if anyone's listening. That's why I asked. Is yes? Go ahead, Brad.
What was it? What was the game that we were playing with Delirium Blades? That was like that. The other zombie game.
Oh, that was Dying Light 2 had that.
Yeah, it's like I applaud Delirium Blades for being like, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll play with you guys. I don't care about my progression. But like there was times where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to play with you, Mooch.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you because I was I was way behind, and I was like, wait a minute, we kept playing on either yours or Blades, and I'm like, my character progression is like shit. So I'm like, I gotta go back and actually play on my channel or on my game save. And listen, it causes turmoil amongst friends because it's just not fun. It's not fun. I don't know. So that's why I was saying my question to the panel. I asked Slow-Mo, but Pio or David Forte, Spawn, guys, chime in. BRAP, like, is this a situation where it was? Where I don't think they elected to do it for fun. It almost seems like they were kind of stuck. A lot of people were saying this game may have originally been a games as a service, and then they stepped back from it. Hence why you still have to do we have to jump through these hoops with always online, and maybe does that hold any water? I mean, why would they put this in there? It's clearly not what gamers want.
I don't know, Mooch. I would say that like these are the kind of quality of life things that I would like for this game.
Yeah.
Because like it to me it creates community, creates engagement with other people that are playing the game, and I don't know the design why they decided this. I mean, maybe there's a technical reason behind it. I don't know, but for me, like for a quality of life type thing, I would have preferred them to have to play. Like I think like Slow-Mo mentioned this, like Borderlands has that. Yeah, and I don't know if there's limitations. They can't do it because like they can't do it. Maybe there's something that Borderlands could do. They can't. I don't know, but I just feel like quality of life. This is something that I think would have helped with engagement, maybe.
Yeah,
but I don't know, man. It kind of turned me off from wanting to play this game.
You know
honestly,
what it's called? Not having enough time to do the things you want to do in the game and not wanting to delay it.
Yeah,
I mean that could be it too. I mean that could be it too.
So because let's be you have a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard you have things that you want to achieve by launch, and then that board gets super big, and then you're like, okay, guys, hold on, we gotta separate some of this stuff. What is essential to the game at launch, and what is stuff that we can add at a later date, or what are things that don't need to be in this game at all that we can cut completely? Yeah. And that might be one of them.
That should not be one of them. I don't disagree of having co-op if only one person.
Life, yeah.
Look, I understand. Like if I join Forte, I still get my levels, and maybe I still get the gear that I may have earned while playing with him. But then I get back to my game, and I got to hear the same dialogue again. I got to hear the same literally everything again. Fight the same boss, do the same content again. Like that's not. Like, unless you are absolutely head over heels for the game and you're like, man, I love this game so much, I'm gonna keep playing it. Even after, like, it doesn't matter to me whether I'm playing with friends or not. I'm gonna play it solo on my own, and I'm gonna play it with my friends, and I don't mind not being the host. Like, no one really knows if that's how they're gonna feel about a game that's a brand new IP.
Right.
Right. So that's really difficult to try to handle, and for Arcane to be doing this. I know this is like they really don't do these kind of games anyway. Like everything they've done has been single player experiences. So maybe this is like kind of foreign to them. But
yeah,
passion project.
Somebody should have told them like this ain't the way.
Well, passion projects need to have needs to have all the features.
Yeah, I don't disagree that's a nice quality of life thing to have. But I do think, at the same breath, I think there's going to be people that it's just not an issue because they enjoy the game a lot.
People, I mean, well, let's be for real. There wasn't when they were talking when we were talking about delay Halo. People was like, I don't need Forge, I don't need this, I don't need that. And then a year later, man, I wish they would have delayed the game.
People don't know what they want.
People don't know what they want until they don't have it, and it's just how it is. But ultimately, what's the precedent that's been set? You know, a lot of games have come out like this, where there has been no shared experience when it goes from going from your game to another player's game. And I mean, is it a lot of games that do that? No, but also the games that don't do that are games that are kind of, I ain't gonna say niche, but kind of like on the fringe of like not really being like celebrated as like a unique co-op game. Like Borderlands will never do that because it's built around co-op. Right. And there's a whole bunch of other games that's built around co-op. So if they know the game is built for co-op, then that is a feature that they make sure is in there because they don't want you to feel like I have to play with my friend. We want you to be able to play with other people and experience that game with other people and take your saves and go wherever you want to. Compared to a game, like you said, this is their first IP in this genre, and maybe they felt like that wasn't important enough. But thing is, are people going to let them know that? Is that going to be something that's going to be 100% known, or are people still going to go out and buy this game in droves or play this game in droves like Microsoft likes to do?
Well, you know, it's funny you
showing their numbers.
You say
fine,
that
it's a Game Pass.
Well,
right, that's what I'm saying. It's a Game Pass, so is it really going to matter?
Pio, you like that one?
I hate that.
That's the worst, isn't it? It's literally the worst.
Because it's just whitewashes everything away. Just like, hey, we have issues with this game, but it's in Game Pass, so I guess I'm just not
it's like when you're
opinion on it.
Slow-mo, it's like when you're hungry at night and then, the missus says to you, well, you can have a bowl of cereal. You're like, come on, I'm freaking starving here. You know what I mean? I need some
cereal.
I hate to... I'm sorry, I'm a little hungry. I apologize, folks. But there's a couple of great super chats. You hear that, Forte?
I hear that.
So shout out to Elemental PO. He's back. He says, these days, if you don't have your internet up and running in a day or so after moving, then you might as well be playing on a Switch for life. Hey, Spawnwave takes offense to that, Elemental PO. By the way, shout out to Phil DVG. He says, Xbox's luck, it'll launch like its sister Diablo 3. And Diablo 3 had connectivity issues, I believe.
They had a lot of issues.
A lot of issues.
The auction house, people hated that.
Oh, the auction house. Yeah.
As much as I hated the auction house, I was still in there every day.
So, yeah, me too.
I was still in there every day grinding like a mug. And I also was one of those people.
Forte, you're part of the problem, Forte.
I definitely was. You're right. Just like I was one of those people that when I bought my house, I literally had internet in my house before I moved in.
That's a smart man, Forte.
That's a Forte. There's nothing wrong with that. That is smart, actually.
I literally sat in an empty house the day before we moved just so they could make sure my internet was
That's a very smart move, Forte. Shout out to Domino Zero. 30 months as a Mooch Maniac family member means a lot to me. He says, Mooch, I'm going to need you to root for my Eagles next Sunday. I can't do it, Domino. I will do it. I'll try.
Absolutely not.
I'll try, but I just...
Not.
You will
they
see
are
them.
in the NFC East rival.
I just can't. I know. I was gonna say I'm gonna have to go buy him a Holmes shirt just to root against him. I apologize, Domino Zero. I apologize.
Terrible.
Let's go Giants. All right, listen. Go ahead, David. Go, please. Yeah, David. I think I cut you off. Go ahead.
Here, I just steer it back to the away from the sports chat because we'd be here forever if we get on the football.
Sports.
Yes, sir.
So just with this internet connectivity constant thing, right? There's a couple of quick points. One, it's going to become more prevalent that games need to be connected to the internet to play them, even in single player, because of this shift to using cloud-based tools to do some of the game building, right? There's going to be aspects of that. And it may or may not become prevalent, but it seems to be shifting that way. But I would point out that Gran Turismo 7 came out with the need to be constantly connected to the internet for various different reasons, as I've explained. Now, if Redfall comes out and single player experience must be connected to the internet for whatever reason, do we even know why? Because I'm yet to work out exactly what the reason is for it. Is it to do with how it's built, or is it to do with the co-op play, or
I have no idea.
I don't know. That was almost a question for the panel. I mean, I do agree with you, David. I don't know. That was the question I had. What was the seeming reason? Someone had said this. By the way, this is just talk on the internet. But somebody said maybe this whole being needed to be connected to the internet was because originally the game had a different scope, and they changed scope maybe mid-production or mid-development. Pardon me. So
Mooch, how are you going to download this game if you're not on Game Pass and you don't have internet?
There's not going to be a physical version, is there, Forte? Or is there?
No, there will be a physical version.
Well, then there's your answer.
Is it going to be like Call of Duty, where it's like a 70 megabyte thing on the disc and you download the rest?
Exactly. Because let's be for real. How do you fudge? I hate saying the word fudge because it's kind of what it is. How do you fudge numbers by saying, hey, it's got to be online so you can have these engagement numbers? So it's going to be available in Game Pass. You're going to have people that's going to go out and buy the game at retail. How are you going to get that data if people aren't online to share that data? So
what you're basically saying is nothing to do with the player experience whatsoever. It's actually kind of strange to me because like the two topics about this game that we discussed are like the polar opposites. Like there's one side of, well, it's a single player game, but I gotta be online for it. Why do I have to be online? And then, well, you gotta be online because there's co-op in the game, but then you got co-op where only the host gets progress, and it's just so.
Seems like it was all an afterthought, wasn't it, Slow-Mo?
Yeah, like so. What are you doing? Are you going to be a co-op game or not? If you're going to make it so I'm always online and then go all in and give everybody progress for playing co-op because you want us to co-op the game. But if you're going to be like, oh, we don't have to like the host, is the selfish bastard that's only one getting all the credit for everything anyway, then let me play offline if that's how you.
That's gonna be a patch 6 months later. Just saying.
Yeah,
I also think the reason it's always online is because they can like sell skins and stuff. You can't like.
That might be it too.
Yeah, they probably don't want people to modify stuff so that they can sell you the skins instead. But my only concern is if the game comes out and it has a rough launch and servers keep cutting out and disconnecting, then the game's basically unplayable. So because the single player relies on it as well. We saw Gran Turismo 7 go down for 30 hours at one point, and the game was just unplayable. So,
I was missed that.
Couldn't even log in.
That was just a recent example of one of these larger AAA games, and that's my only concern is when I hear that single player is tied to always online. You think of like the Diablo 3 situation or Gran Turismo being down for extended periods of time. So hopefully they got a smooth launch ahead of them, because that would not be fun.
Well, Spawn, let me ask you a question here just to get a quick, it's an early review or a thought of it. A couple people in the chat are saying this, and honestly, I would say I agree with some of this statement, not all of it. I'm looking forward to Redfall. Me and Slow-Mo were kind of going back and forth. Me and Slow-Mo both being Borderland fans, this type of game really hits home. But even though the developer says it's not, and it's more like Far Cry, we haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to see the Far Cry.
I still don't see the Far Cry element at all. Slow-Mo, I don't either. But Spawn, what do you think here? A part of me I was more excited for Redfall than even Starfield. And after seeing the latest showing that we got at the developer direct, it looked like it took a bit of a step back, but doesn't mean my excitement for it is that much less. I mean, what was your take on Redfall, from the get-go to where we are today? Are you planning to play this game and put a lot of hours into it?
Yeah, I'll play it. I'll check it out. I mean, if anything, it's on Game Pass, so I'll at least download it and try it out. But it kind of reminds me of Far Cry now that they mention it and you mention it, because whenever Far Cry was being shown, especially Far Cry 6, people would just usually complain, be bored about it and stuff. And I was kind of like that too, because I'm like, this looks like Far Cry. But then Far Cry 6 comes out and I play all the way through it and have a fun time, because I enjoy the Far Cry games as like a guilty pleasure thing.
Right.
Even though the game series definitely needs a reboot of some kind for where it is.
Yes.
I still get it. I'm like, this is mindless fun. I can listen to a podcast or hang out, play through this, go around the points and all this. So I think it's still in that situation, and it's Arcane. I typically give Arcane the benefit of the doubt with the games they've produced. So
yeah,
I'm at this point, I'm just ready for it to get here so I can try it out.
I think that's what it is. And it's funny you say that, but when it comes down to it, that's kind of how a lot of these games are kind of feeling that are coming from Microsoft. It's kind of like, I'll just play it. It's in Game Pass. I'll give it a shot. I'm wondering, and it'll be very curious to see the longevity of how, because I would have thought that this game would actually have legs. I would think that this game would last quite a while, and I'm sure Microsoft is hoping so as well. But yeah, time will definitely tell on that. Just going to switch over real quick because I didn't want to talk about it in immense detail. But Spawn, I'm going to start with you again, just because everyone would like to hear your point on this. So it's official that the EU is issued their antitrust warning against Microsoft and Activision deal. We already know the FTC is going to block. I've had so many people on the show that really are big influencers and discussion pieces on social media, and we've gone from this is a lock, this is going through. There's no way it's even going to get stopped by anybody. It's as clear as day. It's like you buying a Snickers, right? Or you buying a Twizzler pack. You can do it. Now we're seeing another block here, another roadblock. Where are you today, Spawn, from where we were months ago, if not a year ago, on this acquisition? Do you still see it happening, or do you see it happening with so many concessions it doesn't look anything like it used to, or it doesn't happen at all?
I mean, to be honest, I have no idea. I don't think anyone really does, because it's whenever I hear about the stuff coming out of it, it sounds bad, and then I look at it and I go, okay, in this case, they sent them a list of demands or concerns, and then I assume Microsoft retaliates or sends their thoughts back, and they just negotiate at a table. But it's, I feel like at this point, it's so above most of our heads that we're just kind of guessing and spinning in circles trying to figure it out. And usually I just assume that the company with all the money will be able to buy enough lawyers to figure it out in the long run.
That's not a bad point. I do see that. Pyle, let me ask you, Pyle, because a lot of people always go to you as the resident PlayStation guy. So I don't know. We lost the great Xbox 448, but he must have got called into court. But Pyle, since you're representing the PlayStation Nation here tonight, where are you on this? Do you think that this deal goes through, or it goes through with many concessions, or it doesn't at all?
So I have a theory why like Sony does this. So Microsoft is very clear that they're not gonna make at least Call of Duty only on Xbox, right?
Right.
And I think Sony doesn't want them owning Call of Duty just because. So from Sony's point of view, if they just keep fighting it, they're gonna milk it out probably, right? Worst case scenario for them. Best case scenario, they get it. So if they keep milking it out for 2, 1, I don't know how many years. If they block it, they win, right? They're like, oh shit, we won. If they don't block it, like, but you said you're gonna make it non-exclusive, so yeah, you can do it. So from Sony's perspective, I understand why they're fighting it. I just think it's annoying. Like every time I hear news about it, I'm like, whatever. Like I just don't care. Like I wish like if it could end tomorrow, so I never have to read about it again.
It really is.
I wish about it.
Pyle, great point on it being annoying. And actually, I liked your theory there. Sony actually. So what you're saying in short is Sony kind of wins in either direction. Like it either doesn't go through and Sony got their wish, or it goes through and with the concessions and the amount of paperwork that they would file, Sony would end up getting it on their console. And one of the latest concessions that was rumored, and you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong, David, I'll go to you next. Wasn't one of the rumors actually that Sony may even be able to put it on their PS Plus service? So,
I don't think they want that, only because, like, let's say Call of Duty sells. I don't know
if they want it, but
let's say it sells like 20 million on PlayStation lifetime. That's 30% that goes to them. That's a lot of money. To get easy. That's like FIFA money for them. Like that's easy money. I don't think they want to let that go, no matter what. It's easy cash flow for them. Very easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think they would want it. David, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with some numbers, but just stick with me on this, okay?
Okay.
If looking at what Sony provides in reverse engineering from what last financial year and the years before that Activision has in their financial reports, Activision is worth about $500 million. It's about $500 million worth of US dollars worth of revenue to PlayStation, right?
Okay.
That sounds like a big number. Big number. 500 million. Anyone got that in their back pocket? Not really. That's 2% of their annual revenue. 2% of their annual revenue. They've covered that gap this year in the FX changes alone.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a big deal in terms of actual dollars, but in terms of percentage of total, that's all of Activision. That's everything that Activision makes and puts out on Sony platforms. So, if you look at Call of Duty being, 70-80% of that, you're probably talking somewhere around the 450 million mark.
Yeah.
Now, is that a gap that PlayStation can't close? No, they can close that quite easily. They have favourable market conditions, and it closes without them having to spend a cent. But that's not the point that they're trying to achieve here. You look at their history. Microsoft bought Bethesda, and yes, it was a private company acquisition, so there was a lot easier for them to do that. But no one really objected at that point because of what Microsoft was saying. Oh yeah, we're going to buy it. We're going to let them sit out there on their own. We'll case by case basis. We've got these couple of PlayStation exclusives. We'll keep going all good. And then as soon as the deal closed, effectively they have the big round table and they go, these big games are now exclusive to Xbox, and rightly so. You don't go and spend that kind of money to just put it everywhere if you've got your own platform to supply.
Right. Correct.
And fair enough. That's how it should be. So then they go after Activision. Well, straight away there should be opposition to it based on what's going on in terms of their behavior, activity, and their strategy. Now, Sony having kicked up the stink about it and pointed at Call of Duty as their main example point's probably pretty smart from their perspective. But if you think about the long game here, Xbox, they challenged it and said, we don't think this is right because we'll lose. This will all go exclusive. And then Microsoft comes out and says, no, we'll honour the current agreement. The current agreement is 3 years, and I think it was Warzone 2 and one more game.
Correct.
In that 3-year period.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden they make a comment about that and say, well, this is just not good enough for our customers, which is a bit of a reach. I mean, they're not out there working on behalf of the customers out there.
Customers.
Yeah, it's just how they talk.
I love the way they say it. Yeah,
it's the corporate. It's the corporate.
It's
PR.
corporate talk.
But anyway,
yes.
Corporate talk. Sorry, corporate talk. YouTube don't demonetizing for that. So then they go, all right, we'll push the point, we'll push the point, we'll push the point. All of a sudden, the FTC, the CMA, the EU, the ACCC, all these big regulators start pricking their ears up. And then Microsoft goes, oh, we'll make these deals 10 years. We'll put contracts for 10 years, but we won't specify how many games in those 10 years. So then Sony continues down the path with the same argument, saying effectively, it's anti-competitive behavior is one issue, and the other issue is access to markets, and the third issue is parity of the game.
Yep.
And that relates back to if Xbox puts Call of Duty day and date on Game Pass and basically gives away 3 months free Game Pass subscription if you buy the console, or if you've got $1 Game Pass, sign up today and get access to Call of Duty, and PlayStation doesn't have it in their online service subscription offering for the start, that's not parity. And then if they do get it, but they can't match it on price, there's an undercutting activity there, which is the anti-competitive piece. Now, rightly, wrongly, indifferently, that's for the courts to decide and regulators to decide. Regulators are politically driven because they're part of the lawmakers. So who knows what the hell they're going to do from time to time. They could change the laws tomorrow and then it's a different landscape.
Yep.
But the longer that PlayStation drags this out, not PlayStation, the longer that Sony drags it out, the better position they are going to be from where they started, because they've already gone from losing it completely to having the contract honoured for the next 2 games to having a 10-year window with multiple games in it. If they get the concessions at the end and the deal goes through, but the regulators state that all games must be available, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, Call of Duty in perpetuity, blah, all the rest of it. Those are not enforceable contracts, which can be, a contract can be broken with a settlement amount of money paid to get out of it.
That's right.
If it's done by regulation or regulators, and it's a remedy or I can't remember what the other word is, condition of this deal going through. If they fail to meet that condition, all Sony has to do is just lodge a complaint with the regulator, and then the regulator will drag them into court and enforce it. And it costs Sony nothing to have it enforced effectively, other than a letter to the regulator.
Right.
So the long game is that even if the deal goes through and the concessions come through as hard as Sony's pushing for them, Sony could end up with getting all this stuff without having to go into contracts and agreements. And that's a win for them at any stage. And if the deal doesn't go through, then, it's an entirely different landscape. Because to be honest, if Activision, and this is where Microsoft would be silly to do it, but their current behavior indicates that they would. If Activision didn't supply to Sony, they lose about $1.5 billion worth of revenue, which straight away makes them non-profitable just by having that taken out. And then you back out the Xbox revenue or the Microsoft-based revenue. Microsoft will effectively have acquired a company, made everything exclusive, and then tanked about $3 billion worth of revenue, which means that they've just acquired a $2 billion loss. Now, given the current market and the current environment, and given what they've just recently done in their financial performances, I don't think they're in a position to be able to do that. And might I add that Microsoft now has under $100 billion worth of cash sitting idle. If they do fork out $70 billion plus for whatever they end up doing for this Activision deal, that's actually going to put them in quite a precarious position, because they have to maintain $20 billion worth of cash reserves just to operate the whole of Microsoft. So I don't necessarily think that this EU piece is going to be around where the markets. It's going to be, can Microsoft even afford to do this deal now?
That's the thing. I'm wondering.
And that's the thing I've always told people. I said, this move by Sony is going to test the resolve of Microsoft to see how long they want this to go on.
Yep.
Because they hold they hold literally all, because they're the one that's pushing this. the more they fight it, the longer it takes. And it basically comes down to, because I do believe the deal will go through if Microsoft decides that they want to fight this long enough. But how much money are they willing to bleed along the way to get to that resolution? And that's the thing that Sony right now is banking on.
Forte, what you said and what David's original piece was about is fascinating to me, because at the end of the day, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if I'm a very high up executive at Microsoft, I'm starting to wonder, especially with David's information of them having around 100 million left, or 100 billion, pardon me, left for this kind of free spending, and having to leave 20 billion in reserves for, cost, which that just makes perfect sense. Do they want to take the 70 billion that's out there and use it on this one buy and have these issues that could come up? I don't know. I think the longer it goes on, that's why I say this the longer it goes on, the more I think Microsoft just leaves the deal. But
that's why I said it's not going to be because the regulators are going to tell them they can't do it. Right. It's going to be because Microsoft just pulls out of it.
Correct.
Sorry.
Yeah, if they pull out, don't they have to pay Activision a few $1 billion?
$3 billion.
Yeah, $3 billion. Which is way better than it will cost if they keep going in this direction and they don't get this deal done sooner.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If you looked at, and I'm sorry to derail it down the financial path, but I can't help myself. Indulge me for a second. Because we're going to hear about this thing in perpetuity until one of these regulators either knocks this thing on the head, and he's still got 12 left to go through. You look at their financial performance last quarter. Would you, and anybody on this panel, and I ask this question openly, would you take $70 billion and invest it in a known operating loss that was only going to drain money out of your other business segments, or would you take that $70 billion, take $3 billion, get out of the deal, keep the 60 or 70 odd billion that you still have after that, and put it into the parts of your business that are actually making growth in their revenue like clockwork?
Yeah, I would do the latter. I mean, that's me. Yeah. But, because I feel like this 70 billion, as much as they have it to spend, is at I don't know, would you use the word high risk, David, or it's just more, there's risk, and there's definitely risk involved?
It's risk. If they were able to get Activision for exactly what they were at the end of their last financial year, and this financial year they're not tracking anywhere near as good.
No, they're $20 down a share, right?
Yeah. So if you got them for exactly what they did last time, they're about I think it was 800 million or 1.2 billion profit or something. It's $8.8 billion worth of revenue, and if you add that to what Xbox is currently doing, just like for like without any eliminations, that gets them up to about $25 billion worth of revenue. And it brings them maybe profitable. That's debatable depending on how you analyze it. But if you take $2 billion of revenue out of that 8.8, you're back to 6.8, and you had $1 billion loss. So you haven't bought anything useful. You've bought yourself into a money draining situation. And then look at the management issues and how they get games out and all the rest of it at Xbox. When you impose that overhead, that corporate overhead onto it, and then basically just let them do their own thing. It's evident in Bethesda already that the Microsoft management style is allowing them to drift with major games with how many delays they've had.
Yes.
They just don't have the discipline. BRAP and I and others have spoken about this heaps of times. They do not have the discipline there to do what Nintendo and PlayStation and, to be honest, Embracer Group and Take-Two and EA and all these other ones can do. There's an issue there, and it needs to be fixed. But in terms of risk, I mean, even the analysts all the analysts that look at this stuff every day are starting to go, it's probably getting 60-40, 70-30, that it's not going to get knocked on the head by the regulators. It'll just become an unfavorable business transaction
for Microsoft.
I find it so interesting that the company that's in gaming with the most money to spend has the biggest financial issue right now when it comes to this.
I could go on for days with my frustrations about.
I hear
that goes back to the mismanagement. I mean,
it's so crazy.
Think about that. Think about this. And I argue this point. Like part of the concerned regulators that Microsoft can position itself in a loss leader strategy with with Game Pass, and where they're doing it right now with Game Pass. But think about this though, like when you think about loss leader strategy, like we saw the with the Apple and Epic, litigation. Microsoft testified they had the Xbox console, I believe, had never been profitable for Microsoft. Like, what other company could do that? Like, what other company could in 20 years, right, be outside of maybe one generation, the 360 generation, finish pretty much dead last in every generation and still be around? Like, who else could do that? No one could.
No.
Microsoft, because they have the money, they have the war chest to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I? Sorry, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say. So I think that's the other part that people don't realize. I see a lot of people, pom-pomming this deal. And look, I don't care if this deal goes through or not. I really don't. And kind of what Pio said. Like I'm over like hearing about the news about this.
Yeah.
And I don't care. The deal doesn't affect whether it goes through or not. I'll still play COD. But the interesting thing though is that people aren't looking at mass consolidation in the gaming industry. Is that necessarily a good thing for consumers in gaming? Like we have examples of other industries where mass consolidation has taken place, and that's part of the FTC's kind of why they're really looking at this deal and saying, wait, hey, we've always approved vertical mergers, but maybe those vertical mergers aren't necessarily good for consumers at the end of the day. And you look at things like we talked about internet. You look at cable providers. The mass consolidation of the cable internet industry.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily benefiting consumers having less choice. Look at telecom. I don't think that's necessarily benefiting consumers with less.
I'm so glad you say that, BRAP, because that was the talking point years ago. Everyone was like, I can't wait to cut the cable. Now we've got every single company, and you want to watch a movie, a TV show, you got to subscribe to them. They take everything off of the networks. Everything used to be on television. Now it's not on television. Now if you want to watch something that's NBC, you've got to have Peacock. If you want to this, you got to watch, this. You got to go get that. You got to have Netflix. You got to have HBO Max. They said you have to have everything. And like you said, they were advertising this as it'll be cheaper for you, the customer. It's not.
I'm sorry, fuck yeah. I'm still waiting for I see people saying and Microsoft, oh, this deal's great for gamers. I don't think I've really seen them articulate how that's good for gamers.
Yeah, how?
It's good for you guys. It's good for people that are in Game Pass. But what about the people that aren't in Game Pass? Like, how is this how is this good? Like, I that's my question. And again, you look at the cable industry, you look at telecom. We don't have a lot of choices there. Like, I live in an area where I have one cable provider. That's it.
Yeah.
Because they bought up all the competitors in the area I live in.
Yep.
So I can only go to Xfinity. That's it. How is that good for me as a consumer?
There's no way that's good for you.
No, it's not good for me. No, I understand. There's other areas where you have multiple cable providers. I don't know in New York, but you may have maybe 2 or 3, right? And in DC Metro, I think we have 2, right, Slomo? I think we have Verizon, Fios, and that's lucky if Fios is out here.
We have a minimum of 2 per county, it seems.
I think Virginia has Cox, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Cox Communications and Verizon. Comcast is not over the. No, Comcast isn't in Northern Virginia. Wait, no, they are in Northern Virginia. I actually know someone who used to work with them as tech support. So yeah, they are in Northern Virginia, but only in that area. It's almost like a little. I forgot what they called it. Is it duopoly? That might be it. But they're all kind of working together anyway, because depending on where you live, they're all getting the backbone of the internet from one of them. And in our area is Verizon. And Verizon kind of is just running the racket. Like which area you want to work in? I'll make sure that no one else is working is being competition for you in this area. Yeah. And that's how they work.
And I can't say that mass consolidation has led to cheaper prices. When I give the examples of cable and mobile, I can't say that mass consolidation, and that was the argument with T-Mobile. Oh, it's going to be great for consumers. Cheaper. I can't say that I've seen cheaper prices on my cell phone bill.
No.
Or cable.
Cable and cell phone bills have not gone down. I don't, not mine anyway. Not mine.
No, because as they are losing people, they're now doing more consolidating of their services. Let's say you got phone, you got you got cable, and you got internet.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then let's say, you know what? I don't use this phone. We all got cell phones. Why do I have this phone? I need to get rid of that. Why am I even have the cable option? I got like 5,000 subscription services. What do I need? I just need my internet.
Right.
Well, go ahead and cut those two off and see what your
see what happens to your
ISP
price.
does.
Yeah.
Isn't that
It's gonna be the same price.
They jack it. Yeah.
No, it's more.
Yeah.
It's actually more. Like where I live, because I thought about, I don't need phone. Why am I paying for a phone? I don't have a phone.
Right.
And they're like, well, if you cut your phone off, your price is going to go up. What?
Right.
So
yeah, they changed the price. That's why they never want to really tell you what these services cost individually, because they don't really have a set cost. The cost is, look, how much can I get out of you? Because I want you to pay roughly $180 a month. So I don't care what you choose to get.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure you're paying $180 a month, and whether that's you got a phone that you don't need, that you're only getting calls from telemarketers on, or you got cable to one box in your house that's never being used. I don't care, as long as I'm getting this set amount of money out of you. Which is, yeah.
The one thing that I'll leave this last sentiment here as we kind of round out the show is just, and I hear Netflix is walking it back, but you see how Netflix has so many people subscribe to them, right? And they come up with this ridiculous password policy that they were going to put out of, pinging your Wi-Fi once a month. And if you're on the road, you can get a 7-digit a code for 7 days. My only point that I always say on the show, and I ask you guys, whether you're Xbox fans, you're PlayStation fans, you're Nintendo fans, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all of us on the panel and you guys in the chat, we are all on the same team. We don't work for these three companies. So if Microsoft gets Call of Duty and Microsoft gets another big company and Microsoft gets another big company and they start filling up Game Pass, and everybody loves Game Pass right now, I understand that. But remember, they're selling you propaganda. You have to understand, it's $10 a month now. It will not be $10 a month. The same way with cutting the cord and all this stuff. You just heard everybody on the panel go through different experiences, different stories.
Mooch, the first hit is free.
Once they have all those IP in there and they know they got you, it'll be $20 a month. It'll be $25 a month. It'll keep going up. And where are you going to go? They own the IP. They have the games. And you want to play them? That's the cost. So that's what I keep telling everybody. Everyone keeps thinking, oh, this is just the way it is. They're giving it away for $1. They're still farming people. They're still trying to get people into the service. And
that's what happened with Netflix, Mooch. You remember when Netflix first came out?
Yep, it was $1. Right. Get in here for whatever. They just wanted you in there. Now Netflix every 6 months has a new... so sorry to tell everybody, but we're going up again. And what are you going to... You have two choices. Pay it or leave. And you might go, well, I'll do the same thing if that happens with Game Pass. But depending on the library that they acquire, it's not going to be easy to just say you're going to leave. So it is what it is. I'm just saying, keep that in the back of your mind, folks. That goes for any company. It goes for PS Plus, goes for Game Pass, goes for anything. So it is what it is. I want to say thanks to everybody. I promised the panel I would get them out of here in 2 hours, which I didn't do that bad. I'm about 2 hours and 10 minutes, maybe a little over that. I'll go in reverse order here. As always, great to have the great Spawn Wave here. Spawn, please keep doing what you're doing. Not that you would stop. And we love the content. We love how you're very, very positive on the interwebs. You don't get into the nonsense, which we all love. Spawn, let everybody know where they can find you. And of course, please keep your eye on the DM. Mooch will be bothering you again in about 3 to 4 months, as I usually do. Sounds good. You can find me on Spawn Wave or Spawn Wave Plus. Just talking about video games. Spawn, you're so nice about that. You're like, I'm just talking about video games. Stop in and see me. No, guys, go over and check out Spawn Wave Media. He does a great job every day keeping everybody up with the gaming news. Spawn, thanks for being here tonight. It means a lot. Appreciate it, Spawn. Then the great Pio. Pio, listen, I understand it's probably rounding about 3 a.m. or it's a little over 3 a.m., is it not? Right. Yeah. And so I apologize. So either you're going to go to sleep or you're going to go right to the gym and do an early workout. Whichever one you do, I back up completely. Pio, great to have you here tonight. Love to hear your take on the topics. What a week we had with news. Let people know where they can find you. And thanks for being here tonight, Pio.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun talking to you guys. I'm on Twitter at Mr. Pio1, and I'm starting to do more YouTube stuff at Pio Whitewolf. You can also find the link in my Twitter, so very easy to find that stuff. Yes,
Pio, last time you were on the show, I encouraged you. I also am speaking to myself. I want to get more videos out. I want to see more of your videos as well, Pio. So we will definitely promote those on the channel. Looking forward to it. Pyle, thanks for being here tonight. The great David Faulkner as well. David, a plethora of information. I almost felt like you were going to say test on Wednesday after you gave your rant. It was outstanding. Great information as always. I encourage everyone, as David tells you his Twitter, to please go follow him. He is just a plethora of information on all things gaming. David, thanks for being here tonight. I can't wait to have you back on the show. Let people know where they can find you.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me on. You can find me on Twitter at Forky87. It'll be in the comments or the YouTube stuff. As Mooch will put it out there. Hit me up if you got any questions about anything that I discussed tonight. Happy to chat. I try to stay away as much as I can from the console war stuff. It's not really my thing. I just like to stick to talking gaming and the business side of it. But happy to chat.
Appreciate that. David, did you give your Twitter handle?
At Forky87.
Okay, there it is. Everybody go over and check out David. Dave, appreciate that, and I will have you back on the show within a few weeks, absolutely, maybe even a month or so. It's great to have you here, buddy, and shame on me for not having you on sooner. The great Slow-Mo Backslap. Slow-Mo, listen, I know you just podcasted last night with the great Gaming Forte as well, so I apologize for asking you to do back-to-back nights. It's a lot away from the family, but I appreciate it, and as usual, you did not disappoint. Great to have your takes. Love it when you're out there just kind of putting the truth down. Slow-Mo, let people know where they can find you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, no problem. Excuse me. Mooch, no problem. Glad to be here. Glad to be here with this cool panel. And you can find me on Twitch. Let's see, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, everything. Same name, Slow-Mo Backslap. I like to play games, shooters. So on TikTok, you'll just see a lot of highlights of me bodying people. If you like that, hey, check it out. And on YouTube, I got DPS podcast with the homie Gaming Forte, as well as just other content in regards to just game analysis and talking about the games I love. So, come through, check it out.
Appreciate that, Slow-Mo. Please keep up those Slow-Mo plays at lunch, man. Those are great. I'm at work, and I just enjoy the conversation. If I don't always get a chance to be in the chat, I am listening. So please keep doing that, Slow-Mo. I love it. Let's go into the usual suspects here. Of course, the great Gaming Forte. Forte, it's been too long, and I hope it's never that long again. Forte, I love having you on here. Love getting the take. You really give a different perspective. You give the gaming world a look into it from the brick and mortar, from the gaming business side of it. So I appreciate you being here, Forte. Let people know where they can find you. And also, as I said to Slow-Mo, great DPS last night.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was a great time, man. A lot of arguing, a lot of different things happened in that show, but it was great. Shout out to all the people that came to the show today. Shout out to the panel. Awesome being back here with you guys. But for myself, Gaming Forte, same name everywhere you go, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Make sure you come check out DPS podcast. It was on my channel last night. Had a good time with the homeboy Slow-Mo Backslap. And make sure you hit it up next week on Slow-Mo's channel. It's always going to be a great time. We welcome all newcomers and everything else. So with that, Mooch, I will be back. I actually will be back next week because I'm off work next week, so you ain't gonna worry about that. So I'll be here for that. And it's good to be back with you guys, man. It's been a long time and super happy to be here.
Great to cut it up with you as always, Forte. Great to discuss the gaming world with you, and I'm very excited that you'll be joining us again next week. I will advertise it as such. The great Basement Radio Arcade podcast. You guys know him as Hugo Spencer tonight. BRAP. Let people know where they can find Alicia. Jump through the window. But if you could please
I need some more porridge. My chest is turned black.
I want to play the. Go. I'll let you do your plug, buddy. BRAP, great BRAP on Wednesday as well. By the way, outstanding show. Let people know where they can find you. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a great show. Yeah, everyone check it out, please. No, Mooch, hey, great show as always, and big shout out to everyone, the panel, and everyone in the live chat, and please, check out BRAP on Wednesday nights at PV Eastern Time. You can catch me, Slow-Mo, Forte, B-Money, and thank you again, Mooch. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, guys. Just in, who was here? I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the show, but I'll tweet it out all weekend. I was originally not going to be able to do Monday show. I am going to be here Monday night now, so I'm going to be doing The Last of Us reactions for episode 4 with a great panel. It's going to be a lot of fun. Shout out to Forte, too. Forte has stopped by every week. It's great to see Forte. Forte, by the way, hoping you can join us Monday, but we'll talk about that offline.
Yes, sir.
Want to get a great crowd there, guys. Please come over 7 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. We do a reactions to The Last of Us. Every HBO show we go over in depth from an hour to an hour and a half, and it's a lot of fun. And every week brings a little controversy with a little bit of great insight onto every episode. That being said, guys, follow me everywhere. It's Mooch TV. Drop the O's for zeros. It's M00CHTV. That's Twitch. That's Twitter. That's YouTube. Great show tonight. Thanks again to the panel. Thanks again to the chat. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for people that join the channel. And we'll see you next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here. Enjoy your weekend and good night.